No. Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome. Okay, so just doing my normal live stream. So I do this on Thursday evenings in the US, Friday mornings for me here in Australia. So today I first wanted to let you guys know that I'm going to start posting my episodes, my new interview episodes on Sunday evenings, Monday mornings for Perth, and sometimes on Thursdays. But this week I'll be posting one on Sunday, Monday with Dr. Bill Schindler, who is a retired professor of um, archaeology and paleoanthropology at the University of Maryland, who I've had on the show before. And he wrote the book called Eat Like a Human. Really nice guy, very, very knowledgeable on the history of human evolution and civilizations and tools and weapons and eating and food and the different sorts of things that we ate traditionally. And he just did a trip over to the original Blue Zone in Sardinia, and he found that it was absolutely nothing like they tell you in the Blue Zone studies, or like all the different people say, oh, the Blue Zones, Blue Zones, Blue Zones. And he actually showed that no, actually, they're nothing close to what has been reported. So that is a very exciting episode. And so everyone, please tune in for that. And that will be, I'll be doing that as a live premiere and chatting with people live as we watch that. So that will be my Monday morning, and in America will be Sunday evening. And so the more people that join that and hit the like and share and all that sort of stuff, the better it does early on, the better the algorithm thinks that it will do. And so it pushes it out to more and more people. So if as many people as we can get on the premiere, that would be great. I really appreciate that. So lovely. All right, let's see some of the questions. We have already got some rolling in. A question from Batwing. If excess inflammation causes space for lipoproteins to enter the endothelial space, increasing cardiovascular disease risk, can this be reversed, like soft plaque reduced, and or CAC score go down, or once calcified, is it too late? Thank you. It does seem that people can and have reduced their coronary artery calcium score, and soft plaques certainly can be as well. It's indeterminate exactly what's going to do that. I think that reducing inflammation and stop eating these things that are going to precipitate these problems will likely help. I think the only experimental trial that I'm aware of that has shown a reversal in plaques was one involving meditation and stress reduction and cortisol reduction, and people that would meditate for 40 minutes a day. They actually showed that after a period of time, I forget how long, they actually had reduction in their atherosclerotic plaques. Very interesting. So far, I think that's the only experimental study with people that have shown reversal, but it does mean that you can reverse it, right? So reduce your stress, meditate, do something to lower your cortisol, eat proper food, and get rid of these different sorts of things that can cause a problem. And the idea that it's the lipoproteins going in is not necessarily the case. So there's some evidence in different histological studies looking at plaques like in the aorta, and they found that it was actually more what looked like the plant sterols. So these imitation cholesterol molecules from plants. You get all these plant sterols, and that's been said. So this is what you want to do. This is what you want to eat. So this replaces your own cholesterol, the cholesterol that you make and that your body is genetically programmed and primed to make. You don't want those. You want to replace it with these plant sterols. And if you have these plant sterols, your body uses that and says, okay, we don't need as much cholesterol, so we won't make it. And we'll just utilize the plant sterols, which aren't as good. They don't work as well. And macrophages seem to really like cholesterol, and they hang on to it really tightly, but they'll pick up plant sterols and they spit it out. And so it's theorized that that's actually what is going on. You have all these plant sterols, and the macrophages are like, we don't know what to do with these things. We don't like them. We're just going to dump them. And that seems to be what happens with the trans fats as well, and why they're so atherogenic. So it could be one or the other. We don't really know yet. I mean, that's the thing. These are still theories. We don't have, hard proof of exactly what's going on there. But I think it is pretty clear that this is a product of eating something that we're not designed to eat. Because when we started eating all the processed foods and all these things that just didn't exist, like the seed oils and the trans fats and all these different sorts of weird chemicals that we're putting in our body, they just did not exist before the 20th century. And it was the 20th century that saw the advent of cardiovascular disease. It didn't exist really before that. And the first autopsy proven myocardial infarction, heart attack, blockage of the coronary vessels, and death resulting from this, proven on autopsy, was in, I think it's like 1907, 1910, around that time. Very, very, very recently in the grand scheme of things, especially because we've been doing autopsies, thorough autopsies, for centuries before that. And you made your name by discovering a new disease or discovering a new pathology or a new system or new something. You put your name on it. And we still have these things, a Colles fracture in the wrist, a Trendelenburg gait. These are named after people that discovered these things. Cushing's disease, that's Harvey Cushing, the great neurosurgeon, right? So there's a lot of these things that are named after the people that discovered them. And so people really wanted to do that put your name down in posterity for all time. So the idea that just people just didn't see it, and weren't paying attention is ludicrous. We notice a lot of other things. I mean, like, people figured out how the circulatory system worked 500 years ago. Good luck figuring that out now if no one told you how it works. So, the first documented proven autopsy or autopsy proven heart attack happened in the early 1900s, right? But we were eating tons of meat, tons of fish, tons of fat, tons of butter, tons of lard before that. And then you had the first heart attack death in the early 1900s. And in fact, it was people didn't believe it. They were like, no one's ever seen that before. We're calling bullshit. And it wasn't for another decade until they started sort of believing it, because there started more of them started popping up. They're like, oh, okay, weird. That's okay. Something's happening here. And we don't really know what it is. 10 years after that, it's the number one killer in America, right? So something changed. Something changed dramatically right then. And it wasn't meat and it wasn't fat, because we're actually eating the least amount of meat and animal fat in that period through the 1920s and 30s than we had eaten in America in 200 years, right? So we're eating a lot of animal flesh, meat and fat in the early 1800s, and that sort of started trickling down, troughed in the 1920s and 30s, and then started picking up again, right? And so the entire 120 years that we're eating a lot more beef and fat, in the 1800s, early 1900s, no heart disease, no heart attacks, nothing. And before that, nothing either. And then all of a sudden at the trough of when we're eating meat, we have this spike up in heart disease. It's not from meat, obviously. There's not even a correlation. It's not even associated. Now, if you cherry pick and just look at little spots here and there, and you say, oh, well, look, there's a correlation. No, look at the larger timeline, right? There's no correlation, but there's a very strong correlation with seed oils and sugar, refined sugar, processed foods. There's a strong correlation between those and heart disease. And obviously, how can an ancient diet cause a new disease? Heart disease is a new disease. It's brand new. So that's 100 years old. That's it, right? William Osler, the great medical teacher, he was the first professor of medicine at Johns Hopkins. he describes in his books and his writings that, and and he was a world famous, Osler's nose named after him as well, world famous physician and teacher, and he described angina. So angina, depending on the part of the world you are, the sort of chest pain, cardiac chest pain, right? And he described in his entire practice, spanning like 20 years or something like that before he started teaching full time, was he described 6 people that he had that symptom. You don't know if it's blockages of the vessels or narrowing of the vessels, but that's what he described, that type of pain. 6 of them, no heart attacks. Not until the early 1900s you start getting people having heart attacks, right? So where were they? Where was all this heart disease? Where was all this damage and disease? And I'm like, oh, well, people just died when they were 26 before they could, get anywhere. Complete bullshit. That's just historically inaccurate. You look at the the different tables. I mean, we've been keeping track of this stuff since the 1850s in America. If when you were born, your average life expectancy from birth was 38 in 1850 in America. But if you made it to 10 years old, you on average would live 46 more years, right? So big difference, right? Because you're talking about a lot of infant death and infant mortality, and then people dying or getting a famine or caught up in a war or something like that. But as the decades went on, because they track this by every decade, you made it to 20, you make it into your 60s or 70s. It was just like every decade you live longer and longer, and it ended up tracking much closer to modern day. And so, that's just not the case. People just weren't just dying before these diseases showed up. Some people were, but everyone else lived to actually a great age to bring that average up. So, yeah, so it's unclear exactly what's going on there, but I don't think that it's from having normal cholesterol that you make from eating an ancestrally appropriate diet. I just don't think that's possible, because it does not fit the observed facts and phenomena. So thank you very much, Sarah Perrine. She says, where can I find research that shows how polyunsaturated fatty acids and other harmful things are transferred to humans from livestock like pigs and chickens eating GMO feed, corn, soy, etc.? Well, I don't know exactly where to direct you, but you can look. There are a number of different tables and websites that have tables that even sort of USDA sites that will have the nutritional breakdown of different foods. And so you look for linoleic acid. So that's what people are talking about, the linoleic acid, the omega-6s that are predominantly found in plants and seed oils. And it seems that when you feed pigs and chickens and monogastrics and fish this corn and soy and wheat pellets, that they have more of this stuff. They store more of this omega-6s, and as opposed to the omega-3s that you want, the specific omega-3s that you want, because they said there are omega-3s in plants, but they're not the right kind of omega-3s, and you don't make those into the kind that you need. So so that's what you should look for. You look for different nutritional breakdowns of different foods. And that's where you can find that. I know that Dr. Paul Saladino has made a lot of videos on that, and it may be that he has links to those resources as well on those videos or on his website. I'm not too sure, but he certainly has spoken about that a lot. So he may have references there. But you can also just Google around and look for the nutritional composition of different foods, and like grain finished, feedlot beef and chicken and pork and things like that. There you can find examples of the grass fed pasture raised sort of stuff, and and the differences with the ones that are sort of feedlot. And that's what you look for, is the linoleic acid content, which is actually seems to be quite high in pigs, chicken, and fish that are farm raised with corn and soy and pellets that they aren't designed to eat either. Tuna Boy, thank you very much. Question: is TIA mini stroke possible for someone who is carnivore, 3 years, non-diabetic, no hypertension, and active except just high LDL? So TIAs are going to be TIA is a blockage of your vessels in your brain, or vessels leading to your brain, that is transient. So that's what the T stands for, is transient ischemic attack or ischemic accident. And the transient is the key there, right? So you have this blockage and that cuts off blood to part of your brain. You have stroke-like symptoms specific to the area of the brain that you lost blood supply to, and then it unblocks itself and goes away, and you recover and you have no problems. You have no permanent issues. So that's what a TIA is. You can have a stroke and have damage and recover from that damage. That's a stroke. But a TIA it resolves within 24 hours and leaves no lasting damage or effect on MRI. TIAs and strokes in general have many different causes. Some people may have seen that lady who is carnivore, and she had a stroke a few weeks ago, and she did a couple of videos on that and saying, oh, well, should I stop this and should I go with it? She decided she was going to keep going with it. And after sort of reassuring herself by looking at the data and things. So her specific case was she actually has a defect in her heart. So it's a atrial septal defect. Well, she didn't say it was an ASD, but you can have a VSD, ventricular septal defect. Very commonly, you have it in the atrium, and so that makes things from the right side of the heart pass over to the left side of the heart without having to go through the filter of the lungs first. And so she had a DVT, so a deep vein thrombosis in her leg, from a long plane flight, which is a risk. That's why you wear compression stockings. That's why you get up every hour or two and just walk around or do calf pump raises. That's to keep that blood moving and circulating. And women are at higher risk of getting DVTs, although she's postmenopausal, so that's not as big a risk. People on birth control, high estrogen states, they are at higher risk of getting clots as well. So regardless, she seems to have gotten a DVT, and she has this atrial septal defect, and so she flicked off a little clot. Normally that would go into the lungs. If it's small enough, it may not cause too much problems, but if it doesn't even have to be that big, but it causes what's called a PE, or a pulmonary embolism, and that's A, painful, B, can be dangerous, or even life-threatening if it's big enough. But if you have that atrial septal defect, it can flick over to the other side and then get into your systemic circulation, and now it's blocking off things around the body. And in her case, it went to her brain, and they were able to reverse that. And she was so she fully recovered. So getting a TIA for that, anyone can get that. Or if you have atrial fibrillation, where your atrium is not really beating in a proper way, it just sort of can't quite coordinate a beat. You have a little thing called an atrial appendage, which is sort of the size of the tip of your thumb, and that just sits there, then blood in stasis will collect, and it will congeal, and it will form a clot, and then it starts pumping again. All of a sudden, it flicks off that thumb-sized clot, and that makes a big stroke, because you don't have very many vessels that are that big, right? So it's going to clot off a big part of your vascular system, and that has nothing to do with your LDL. I don't think atherosclerosis has anything to do with your LDL, as well, depending on the type of LDL you have. But if you are on a carnivore diet, or a keto diet, and you have high HDL and low triglycerides, and you have done for years and years, I don't think that that's at all a risk for atherosclerosis. And that can be also a cause of a TIA or a stroke. You build up atherosclerotic plaques and blockages in your brain. It just sort of narrows. And then again, a lot of these things come from damage and repair. So you get this sort of scar tissue and it scars down. And then all of a sudden you get damage and it goes and it clots off, right? And so that can be a cause of a stroke too. And it could be a TIA. You could flick off little bits of that, and it can fly off and hit different things. Like if you have a lot of atherosclerotic plaque in your carotid arteries, that can flick off little pieces of debris, and that can go and cause little TIAs as well. So it really matters what's causing that. What the etiology behind the TIA is or the stroke. There are things that certainly have nothing to do with cholesterol at all. Even if we're to believe that cholesterol has anything to do with atherosclerosis and cardiovascular disease, there are many causes of TIA and stroke that have nothing to do with that process, with atherosclerotic process. However, atherosclerosis, right? I don't think that you're at risk of that if you are eating a proper diet and you're not stressed out and your cortisol levels are low and all these sorts of things, and you don't smoke and you don't drink, and there are a lot of things that go into it. But not everyone has been doing this since birth. Not everyone has been living a very calm, quiet, nice, de-stressed life since birth. And so you can build up plaques in your life, and you can have a CAC score that's elevated or have soft plaques developed already. And then you go onto a less inflammatory diet and you reduce your stress and you stop smoking and you do all the good things that will help you and, reverse your diabetes and reverse your metabolic syndrome, all reducing significantly your risk for heart disease. But you can still have these little buildups, and one of those little things can get damaged and they can flick off a clot, or they can flick off some debris, or they can clot off themselves, and you can have a problem. So, but that's from buildup of years and years and years and decades of doing these other things, and before you started switching things around. So that's definitely possible. But the sooner you get on to doing the right thing, the more time your body has to heal. And so I think you'll be better off. So sort of a long-winded answer, but I think that it was important to sort of go through that thoroughly. And thank you, Rachel, for the super chat. She says, I know some people who have been experiencing meat aversions with no health issues. What's the best advice for them, fasting or drinking bone broth? Well, whatever they can do, whatever they enjoy doing. If they happy with bone broth, then that's fine. But no, I think fasting is a good idea. I think if a steak doesn't taste good, you're not hungry and your body is telling you to stop. This can happen in pregnancy. And my theory behind that was that your body's just probably telling you just don't eat for a little bit. Just let your body clear everything out. Eventually meat will taste good. And you don't have to eat. If it's a specific meat, some people say this, I just can't do beef, but lamb I really like. Fine, whatever, eat lamb. But I would still only eat what's good for you, which is meat. And so, or the best for you anyway. And so, yeah. So if someone has a meat aversion, I would take that as a sign that my body wants me to fast. I had some meat aversions once, and I got back to the house. I'd just done a big workout with the rugby team, and I lifted weights for several hours, and I was like, oh, great. I hadn't eaten that day. And I was like, great, I'll go back, have a big steak, because I need the energy because I'm going to do the same thing tomorrow. And everything in me just said, sounds awful. And it was really confusing to me. I was like, why does steak sound awful? I love steak. That's my favorite thing to eat. Why would I not like that? Why wouldn't my body be saying, ugh, I don't want it? But that's what the sense I was getting. So I said, okay, I'll cook a steak, but I'll do like a reverse sear and cook it up really slowly and take like 2 hours with it, watch a movie and just chill out. And it was getting very late at this point. It was like past 11, and so I finally got the steak out, and I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, man, I guess it sounds okay. And I started having this a bit, but I just wasn't enjoying it. And I got about a quarter way through it, and I was just so not enjoying this that I just said to myself, I was like, look, I'm really not liking this. I don't really want to eat this. Or I'm just going to stop. I'm going to put it in the fridge, and I'm just going to roll the dice that this is okay. And I was very nervous about that. And the next day, I felt fine. I felt great. I had tons of energy, had a great workout, had a great day. And that night, that steak, which was now cold and dry and hard, tasted delicious. So that was indicative that my body wanted those nutrients again. So if you have a bit of aversions, I would just, you just don't eat that day. That's fine. Just drink some water, and eventually your body will speak up again. But if it's like chicken tastes good but steak doesn't for some weird reason, or vice versa, just eat the meat that you're enjoying, your body's happy with, but still keep eating meat. I would avoid dairy, and other sorts of things as well. But just try that. And if your body just really doesn't want meat at all, just don't eat. Give it a few days, or a day or a few days or something like that, and just see what happens. I've spoken to Dr. Kiltz as well from a fertility point of view, and from a pregnancy point of view, because he's a fertility doctor, and he has run into this, and he thinks the same thing. He thinks that when you get these aversions, it's your body naturally telling you fast, be in ketosis, get all this stuff out of your system, and just let things be for a little bit. And that's what he thinks is going on physiologically as well. I should also say, everyone, I do have an appointment at 12, so that's in 2.5 hours. I know that's a long time from now. It may not go that long, but historically, it's sometimes gone like 3 hours. So we'll just that's my hard stop anyway. So we'll just we'll see how it goes. So, question from Russell. Thank you very much for the super chat. Do you regularly eat eggs and butter, or just beef? I mostly eat beef and sometimes eat eggs. I will use butter if things are too lean. A lot of the steaks or just the meat in general in Australia is trimmed, I think, to a fault, and there just isn't enough fat. And so I add butter to it. Quite regularly. I'll just add a bit of butter and just melt it onto the steak. Makes it taste delicious. If I'm cooking eggs, I've taken a note from how Maggie up in Alaska, or up in Alberta, does it, which she makes scrambled eggs with a lot of butter, and so I started doing that as well, which is really nice. And so, yes, I will eat eggs and I will use butter, but I mostly eat beef. Vast majority of what I eat is beef. Okay, so this from Isabel Betancourt. That's there's super chat, but there's no question. So thank you for that. If you have a question, hopefully that's in there. I'll see if I can. See if I can find it. Shoot. Well, I'm not seeing anything. Okay, well, sorry about that. If there was a question, sorry it didn't come through. But yeah, please try to make sure that the question gets through everyone, because sometimes that does come through without a question, and that's a shame if you're trying to get something through. But if you're just sending that in support, then thank you very much. Oh, there it is. So Isabel says, 4 years carnivore, cut salt recently because of bloating. It went away, but still bothers me often. No electrolytes. I have no issues other than water bloat. Am I dehydrated or drinking too much water? Well, that's a good question, and it's hard to say for sure. I mean, you sort of cut off salt. Not everyone has to, but if you found that improved things, and that's great. I mean, I've just sort of naturally done away with salt just purely out of preference. It just meat just tastes really good on its own. I don't need salt anymore. And a lot of people find if they cut out salt after a week or so, then it tastes great and they don't need the salt. So I didn't do it that way. I just naturally just went, I don't want as much salt anymore. And eventually I just started eating things without salt, and I preferred that. Um, as far as the water bloat, well, it's difficult to say. I mean, it could be something else going on that's causing you to retain water. I'm not 100% sure what you mean by water bloat. Maybe bloating in your stomach. That could be just a product of something that you're eating, the meat that you're eating. If it's, if it's, chicken or fish or something like that that's farmed and fed other things, it could be your body's reacting to something that's in the meat that isn't really supposed to be in the meat. And so you can try changing the different things that you're eating. I don't know if it's from water. I mean, you can try changing the amount of water, but you shouldn't get bloated from drinking too much water. You certainly shouldn't get bloated from not drinking enough water. You just be dehydrated or peeing a lot. And so I think it's probably more likely to do with something in the meat that you're eating, or if you're having dairy, or God forbid using sweeteners or something like that, which it doesn't sound like you are. If you're not using salt, you're probably not using any sweeteners or coffee or anything like that. But if you are, I would cut all that out. So I'd cut all coffee and tea and sweeteners and dairy and even eggs, and just try to go down to just red meat and water for 30 days and see if that helps, And so you can also do like a food diary and just track exactly what you're eating and the symptoms you get afterwards, if you get any. And then you may be able to see what the relationship is between what you're eating or what you're not eating. If you're not drinking, if you're just you drink a lot of water and it goes away, or you don't drink enough and you drink too much or whatever, maybe that can do it. I would be surprised if it was the water, but you never know. And that's why you keep track of these things to sort of see a relationship. I would be more suspicious of the things that you're eating. And so I just try to default down to just meat and red meat and water, and see how you go. If you're already sort of doing that, get rid of all the last little vestiges and try for grass-fed and finished, and see how you go anyway. But that's I don't think it's from the water anyway. That would be strange. Yeah. Sorry I couldn't be more help, but hopefully that gives you some ideas and directions to go. Thank you very much, Lori Olson. She says, hubby had 6.2 centimeter left frontal primary malignant tumor removed. Well, I'm glad it was removed. I'm very sorry that happened. Was ketovore, now strict carnivore, exogenous ketones added, glucose low. He's refusing radiation and chemo right now. Advice or recommendations? I would just devour everything from Professor Thomas Seyfried, Seyfried, and look at his protocols, and specifically looking at GKI, so glucose ketone index, which just sounds like you're already following, and getting your ketones up. Generally good to do that with your diet and fasting. Exogenous ketones, sure, but best to do that with just the things that you're eating or not eating, and keeping the glucose low, certainly. So you can do that so you just check your blood ketones. Urine's not accurate, not accurate enough for what your purposes are. And then a blood prick glucose monitor as well, or testing as well. And you check that twice a day. Right? Every day. And if you get down to a place where your GKI is steadily low and you know how to sort of control it, maybe you just do it once a day or once every few days just to make sure you're on track. But initially, you want that twice a day. Okay. And there are different sorts of things used off label that can help reduce, blood sugar. I mean, things, people take metformin off label to sort of help bring down blood sugar, and also for like David Sinclair from the longevity expert. He takes it for longevity purposes, and there do seem to be indications that this can help prolong life, just in general for the general public. And so doing that can help bring down the blood sugar as well. But you'd have to speak to he'd have to speak to his doctor about that, about getting, because that's obviously a prescription. And then it's just keeping that GKI down. You can have periods of fasting as well, if that helps bring the ketones up and keep the blood sugar down. You want to keep that below 2 or below 1 if possible, and that seems to give the best results so far on the preclinical and small clinical trials that we have had so far, and there's larger clinical trials being done. So if he wants to speak to a doctor who does this, there are people around the world who do this. You're in Canadian dollars, so I'm assuming you're in Canada. I don't know of anyone in Canada doing this. However, Dr. Hugh Hu at Cedars-Sinai in America is doing a large clinical trial for this, for primary brain lesions, and so you might be able to get on with them, or at least get some ideas from them. There are pharmacological aids. So 2 things is, one is glucose that you need to address, which you're doing with the diet and the GKI. Great. The other is glutamine, because a GBM gets around 75% of its energy from glutamine and 25% from glucose. So reducing the glucose is great, but the glutamine side of things is also important to think about. And that is something you have to target with pharmacology. So because glutamine's in everything, we make it as well, but it's also in all the proteins, plant or animal. You're not getting away from this by being vegan or vegetarian. It's everywhere. But that could be why fasting helps as well. We're doing ketogenic carnivore diets. We're not bringing in any exogenous carbohydrates, and so we're sort of fasting from carbohydrates. Well, you can fast from glutamine as well. Now, glutamine does get denatured when you cook it as well. So if you're sort of eating more well done things, or medium well sort of things, that should knock out a lot of the glutamine. But periods of fasting will just stop you from bringing in glutamine at all. So something to think about. That's not proven one way or the other, but it's just some thoughts just on the mechanisms. And then there are pharmacological interventions as well that are all off-label. So you'd have to sort of look into that yourself and see if you can, if that's something that's right for him to try, or discuss with his doctor and all that sort of stuff. But that's the idea of Dr. Seyfried is this press pulse sort of situation where you really hit it strong and then let your body rest, and hit it strong and let it rest. So you take medications to stop the cancer from using the glutamine, and you're fasting and doing keto or carnivore to not provide it with glucose, and you're starving this thing from energy. But you sort of hit it with and you can do the diet all the time, right? But then you have to sort of hit in this pulsatile fashion with these medications that disrupt glutamine. And you can also do fasting as well, which will partly limit the amount of glutamine coming in, and that will just sort of keep hitting it and trying to knock it back. And so when you do that, that can be effective. It's certainly effective, very effective in preclinical studies with mice. And when they're able to use DON, DON, which is just a abbreviation for a long chemical name that we talk about in our podcast that I do with him, with Professor Seyfried, and that he talks about in all of his talks, and in his studies and things like that on mice. He shows that it's very effective doing the diet and using DON. All the rats in the study, one of the studies that he published, they all survived with equivalent of GBM. brain cancer, glioblastoma brain cancer, right? So that's major, because that's never been really achieved before in any real way. And so the diet extended life in the mice. Dawn on its own extended life a little bit more, which you'd expect if glutamine is a major is the major driving factor of energy. But the combination, none of them died. The cancers died, the mice didn't die. That's great. So, one thing too you have to remember is that you don't want to lose too much weight. You don't want to be damaging yourself too much. So if you are going to be fasting, you are going to be limiting what you're eating. You're going to have refeed periods. So you're going to have to be able to catch up every now and then, and and sort of fast for several days, but then eat a lot of meat after that. So you're not losing too much weight, or he's not losing too much weight, and getting hurt because of that. So, but yeah, so just devour everything from Professor Seifried, and start with watching my interview with him. That goes over a lot of good information. From JGR, thank you very much. I'm 43, CrossFit 4 times a week in the morning, OMAD, so 1 meal a day, eat 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Is it okay to fast that long while working out? I do take aminos and protein post-workout. Well, yeah, look, if that's what your body is asking you for, and that's all your body needs, then that's fine. Jesus, come on. Then that's fine. I find that when I'm working out, I can't get as much as I need in just one go. But if you're eating until you're full, if you're eating until meat stops tasting good, fatty meat stops tasting good, especially if you're working out, you're going to need more energy and more fat, and more protein, but you'll just need more of everything. That if you're able to do that and you eat until meat stops tasting good, and you're just not interested in eating again until the next sort of eating window, fine. But if you find yourself hungry throughout the day, you're probably not getting as much as you need for the workouts that you're doing. I find that I can't eat enough in one go if I'm working out heavily. And so I need to do that twice a day. So I'll go from eating, 2.5 pounds of meat a day, fatty ribeye a day, to eating 4.5 pounds of fatty ribeye a day. Right. So that's very different. And if I do that, then I just put on muscle more easily than I ever have in my entire life. And so that's the thing. So it really just depends on you. It depends on if you are getting enough for your body, and if your body's happy with that. If if it's the case that you feel fine, then great. You could always try, eating another meal as well. And if it's, it still tastes good, then great. And then you have your other big meal, just test it. It could be fine. But if you're working out a lot, it may be that your body needs a bit more than that. But if you can do it in one go, fine. But just see how you go with that. Chitin says, thank you very much for the super chat. Soy-free eggs, can you literally feel the difference digesting them? I don't personally feel a big difference. I think the big difference is going to be in people that have more sensitivities and have like autoimmune issues. They're probably going to be a bit more sensitive to this sort of thing. And they're a bit more nutrient deficient. I mean, they just don't have the same nutrient complement as like regeneratively raised, just normal chickens that just eat normal things. And so it's, it's a long-term sort of thing. It's not necessarily something you're just going to feel that morning, unless you're sensitive to it, unless you have an autoimmune issue. Then you probably will find a difference. I don't notice a difference, but I don't have sensitivities to those things that I know of, and certainly nothing like Crohn's or rheumatoid arthritis or something like that, where like I have a a serious reaction to something if it goes wrong. And so it would be individual, but yeah, it's probably just a buildup over time. You're getting more like omega-6s, you're getting less folate, you're getting less of the B vitamins, you're getting less all the different sort of nutrients and vitamin D and all that sort of good stuff that you want from eggs, you're just getting less of it. And so over time, it's just not as nutritious. You may end up finding that you're not as satisfied with with a lot more eggs. When I'm eating like the grass fed, grass finished 10-year-old cow that I had before, that was, I mean, I ate much less than the normal, like, prime sort of Costco beef, way less. And I felt supercharged all the time. And I think that's because I was getting more nutrients and my body was saying, yep, that's all you need. You don't need to keep eating this sort of stuff. Like, that's all you need. You got all of it. We're done. So that could be a case that you might find that you're eating more or something like that to get the same amount of nutrients. And that could be a thing. But I personally don't feel a difference digesting them. Some people might. Zelo, thank you very much for the super chat. Least worst cheese to snack on once in a while. Well, any cheese that just doesn't have any additives is going to be less worse. I wouldn't snack on it like just eating chunks of cheese. Just eat it with meat. Like, have a piece of meat with a piece of cheese, or melt some cheese on it. Some people will have problems with aged cheese. Seems to be an issue for some people. It can be a migraine trigger for whatever reason. So that can be an issue. So fresher cheeses, no additives, will probably be less offensive for most people. But just see how you go. I would avoid the sort of the fake cheeses, and things with like a whole bunch of additives. Just things that should just be just milk, cream, and cultures. Basically the only thing you should see on there. So just and then just see which ones you do best with, because people may react to something. But cheese in general is fine for most people, but it really should be kept as a condiment, because people really easily overeat on cheese and just dairy in general. And they start eating a lot of cheese and they still eat the same amount of meat, because, again, I think your body's going for nutrients, not calories. And so your body's going to try to get all the nutrients it needs from meat, and you don't have all the nutrients you need from cheese. So you need to eat the same amount of meat. And I talk to a lot of people about this, and especially with like their kids or their teenagers, and they go like, "Ooh, is this a big deal?" Because I tell them, like, you need to eat a lot of meat, but they're just eating cheese, because they know you need to eat meat, and they end up eating more meat, but they still eat the exact same amount of cheese. And that's exactly what I've noticed with people, is that you can basically have an unlimited capacity for cheese and dairy, but you still need meat. And so you may actually end up overeating at that point. And the more you eat, the more nutrients and physical mass and matter you're bringing into your body, right? And so that may be more than your body wants. And while you can listen to what your body is saying, if you're eating the right thing, cheese is one of those ones that sort of sneak in under the radar. So I'd just be a bit careful about that. Simply Realistic, thank you very much for the super chat. Hello, trying the carnivore diet for 3 weeks. Good for you. Good for you for giving that a shot. I believe the peasant feed is killing us. It definitely is. But I struggle to chew fat. I'm repulsed by it. Please help. Will cheese and New York's work melted marbling count? Yeah, marbling's totally fine. One thing, now this is very common. So this is a very common aversion that people have, is this fat aversion, because we've been told from birth, most of us, I certainly was, fat's bad. Fat's going to cause heart disease. Fat's going to kill you. Dr. Pritikin was a household name when I grew up, in my family. So it was just like, oh, dude, the Pritikin diet, that's a heart healthy diet. And you got to do this, it's going to protect your heart. And you just get rid of all traces of fat, animal fat out of your diet. And so it's dead ass wrong. I mean, he was a professor at Loma Linda Medical Center, the Seventh-day Adventist. He was one of these ideologically driven vegans, basically pushing a plant-based doctrine on people. And so you can just throw all of that out. Unfortunately, probably did some good things in his life, It's all tainted. It's all tainted. When you get that serious ideological drive, or signs of corruption, like with Ansel Keys, I'm sure Ansel Keys did a lot of really good things in his career, because if he didn't, he wouldn't have any authority to sell. But he did sell it. He sold his integrity, and you don't know when that started. You have no idea. And so, what can you trust? I can't trust anything that guy did. I just can't, because it may look robust, it may look really, really well done, but we know that he was paid off to cook the books. We have the documentation of that. So it may look robust, it may look great, but was he just lying? Was he making things up? Was he doctoring the evidence to make it look like it was better than it was? I don't know. And I think the same thing with Pritikin. You can't trust this guy. But that was the whole thing. Don't eat fat, don't eat fat, don't eat fat, don't eat fat. And so I even found myself, all growing up, you see like some fat cook, because we would cut off all the fat from steaks. We get sirloin steaks and cut the fat off. And then my mom would sort of cut it up into things and sort of crisp it up a bit and just leave it there. And she'd have some, because she never bought that the whole fat is bad for you thing. My dad did. My dad definitely did. And so we all sort of heard that too. And I would just smell this heavenly scent, around the house. I'm like, what is that? You go in the kitchen, you see these things, and you're like, oh, I shouldn't do that. That's bad. And I'd have one. I just eat it. I'm like, oh my God, that's the best thing I've ever tasted in my entire life. But you just felt like, you just felt disgusted with yourself that you ate this, because it was just pure fat. Oh my God. No problem with candy. Just eat the hell out of candy, right? But no one told you that candy was all that bad. Oh, it's just candy. Oh, you don't want to eat too much. Yeah. And so very backwards there. But what you can do is you just this is a conditioned response. You've conditioned your body to be averse to something that objectively tastes amazing, right? And so you can undo that. So just take small pieces of fat and cut off a little piece of fat, put it with a leaner piece of meat, eat them together. It will taste good. And you just sort of keep doing that and just work your way up, work your way up, work your way up. After a few weeks, few months, you will find that that you can easily eat visible fat, and it tastes good and you enjoy it. And so it's just a conditioned response that you can decondition. So you've been in a cult, and now you're in your deprogramming sort of phase. So, but that's what it is. So yeah, having a bit of cheese or melting butter onto a steak, if you can't see it or there's marbling and you're happy with that, fine. The visible fat, if you have a problem with that, cut a piece off, put it with a lean piece, eat those together. They will taste amazing. And then you just build up. You just build up, and then pretty soon your body just goes and remind yourself, fat's not bad for me. It's not going to cause a heart attack. It's really good for me. It's what my brain is made of, and that it's okay. I mean, I had to do that to myself after I started this. I was still trimming the fat off, and I'm like, wait, what am I doing? Like I've seen the data, I've seen the literature, I've seen the reports. I trust the literature. I trust that this is good for me. Fat's good for me. Eat the damn fat. I had to actually tell myself that in my head. Eat the damn fat. So that's how I did it, and that seems to work for a lot of people. Stephen, thank you very much for the super chat. Dr. Barry says to eat 2-to-1 fat to beef ratio. So that'll be 2 grams to 1 gram. 2 grams of fat to 1 gram of protein ratio. So for 1 pound of beef, 80 grams of protein, consume 2 pounds of pure fat. To meet the protein needs of a 200-pound person, eat 2 pounds of beef, 4 pounds of fat. Is this correct? Is this what you do? So it's a little bit different. So the thing is that it's not. So the lean meat isn't 100% protein, and the visible fat isn't 100% fat, right? So you can look at some of these different nutritional tables, and you can see, like, for an average ribeye, how many grams of fat do they have? How many grams of protein they have? Well, it's about equal. It's about 1 gram to 1 gram. And if you look at a ribeye, yeah, there's a lot of fat, but it's not the same amount of fat to lean meat by weight right? So the grams of fat are a little different, and there is some fat in the what looks to be lean as well. So it's grams of fat and grams of protein, not just, you know, grams of the visible adipose tissue and the visible lean muscle tissue. So it's a little different because there's other things in there. And um, so no, you don't need to eat 2 pounds of of beef and then 4 pounds of fat, because there'll be a lot more grams of fat in there. So look at that. So for 1 pound of beef, right, you get 80 grams of protein. Okay, so you want 80 grams of fat, and there are a lot more than 80 grams of fat in 2 pounds of fat, right? So that's what he's talking about. He's not talking about the weight of the lean and the weight of the adipose tissue. It's grams to grams. So 2 grams of fat, 1 gram of protein, or 1 gram of fat, 1 gram of protein, up to 2 grams of fat to 2 grams of protein. There's a range, and different people need different amounts. And so but that's how your brain should be working, sort of 1 or 2 to 1, gram for gram. And what that is, 1 to 1 grams, 1 gram of fat, 1 gram of protein is about 70% calories from fat. And 2 grams to 1 gram is about 80% calories from fat. Okay, so that's where that comes from, and that's what that's doing there. So you just want to aim for that. And some people, if you're working out more, if you're putting on muscle, or you're coming from a sarcopenic state where your muscles have been wasted and atrophied due to malnutrition and inactivity for years and decades, and just through aging, you may need more protein. You may need to have, or just more food in general. So again, just eat until meat stops tasting good. Fatty meat. Make sure you're getting fatty cuts. If it doesn't taste fatty enough, add butter to it. I think that looking at your stools is a good way of knowing how much fat you need to get, and that's because your body has a limited capacity to absorb fat. And I think that limited capacity is an intentional limit, because it says that's how much we want. We don't need or want any more than that, and so there's a spillover. So it absorbs as much as it wants to with your bile, right? And then after that, it just goes out. A little bit will get absorbed without bile, but not much. And so the rest of it will go out. So it's a spillover, right? So I want to get to that spillover. I want to make sure my body has as much fat as it wants. And so I keep eating until I get that spillover, and that's what keeps my stool soft. You get excess fat in your stools, that keeps it soft. If you're not getting enough fat, or you're eating a lot of cheese, that can be very constipated, you'll get very hard, dry stools. And it's difficult to deal with that. And that, I think, is a good sign that your body is absorbing every ounce of fat that you're eating, and none of it's coming out. So you don't want that. You want to satisfy your body's desire for fat. And the only way you really know that is if you have a little bit of spillover. Okay. If you get a lot of spillover, if you eat a lot more fat, then your body can absorb. You'll get a lot of spillover, and you'll get loose stools. And you also get loose stools with coffee, tea, chicory root, and other plant laxatives, and sweeteners like erythritol, monk fruit sugar, stevia, and certainly the artificial sweeteners. And so I would just avoid all that stuff, because that can throw a fly in the ointment and things like that. So that's what it is. You want 80 grams of protein. That means you want 80 grams of fat, up to or around 160 grams of fat. So that's what that is. And some people need a bit more, some people need a bit less of either one, but you need enough fat and you need enough protein, right? So just keep eating until your body tells you to stop. If you're eating more lean meat, it'll stop tasting very good pretty quick. And then you start adding in some fat, and it's delicious again, right? So that's a good sign that your body's looking for that nutrient, those nutrients that come in the fat. Okay. Homesick Buckeye, good to see you, buddy. Hey, Doc. The Reverend sent you a link on Patreon. Okay, sounds good. I will check that out. Just eat some meat. Thank you very much for the super chat. A friend of mine has a genetic kidney issue called cystinuria. She does eat meat, but is told that eating too much will make this worse and cause her more kidney stones. I don't think that is the case at all. That's not something I treat, but kidney stones are not caused by eating meat. They're caused by other things, many other things. One of them being, eating a bunch of plant toxins and nonsense that your body has to get rid of somehow and gets rid of through the kidneys, like oxalates. This is why roughly 75% of kidney stones are calcium oxalate stones, right? Because calcium binds to the oxalates, right? Or the oxalates bind the calcium. Okay. So that's not what you want. And so the idea that meat makes your kidneys worse is simply untrue. That was just unfounded. That was a theory that came around in I think the 80s, and that has since been proven to be false. And in fact, more protein, more meat improves kidney function and kidney health, and it does not cause kidney stones. If you're going carnivore and you start oxalate dumping, down the track, you can potentially get stones. That can happen, but it's generally sort of getting rid of this stuff, and then it's over, right? If you keep eating things with oxalates, then you're going to keep exposing yourself to oxalates. You're going to keep having to dump oxalates and get rid of oxalates in your kidneys. So this is going to make things worse. So no, I don't think there's any reason to think for a second that would cause kidney stones. She can always ask me, like, is there, just say, hey, look, I'm having trouble finding that in the literature that meat causes kidney stones. Is there something I can read somewhere? I've never heard of even a suggestion that eating meat causes kidney stones, and I've certainly not seen that in the literature. And so, that sometimes can help the doctor think and go like, have I been pushing something that actually isn't factually based? And unfortunately, we do that a lot because we hear something and and a lot of medicine is sort of like an apprenticeship. You just learn things from other people, and you just don't have any reason to disbelieve it. So you say, okay, I'll just do that. And then you sort of look it up later and you go like, not even close. Right. So it's, it's important to be reminded of that sometimes too. And sometimes you have someone come in and be like, well, this is what's going on. Man, well, that's not supposed to happen. Well, it is. And, can you show me the evidence? And you go like, damn it. It was just something someone told me during residency. So it's like, well, okay. So it's always fair to ask, do it in a nice way. Don't be confrontational, but you can always ask. But no, I don't think that that's going to harm her at all to eat meat. I don't think it's ever going to harm anyone to eat their biologically appropriate diet. I don't think that's an oxymoron. It's a contradiction in terms. It's what we're designed to eat. So of course you should eat it. Of course it's okay to eat it. Those are my thoughts anyway. Steve Global Traveler, thank you very much for the super chat. Question: do you think X3 is worth the money, and it'd be better, and it would be better than, say, barbells, aka Stratton H strength, say SSTSR? I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I'm not familiar with the Stratton strength sort of things. Barbells, you can do a lot with those. I mean, I have a set of the Bowflex adjustable dumbbell sort of things. You can do a lot of stuff with dumbbell. The X3 bar covers a lot. I mean, I still do other workouts, but the X3 covers a lot, and it's one of those things. It's very individual. So is it worth it? Well, it's worth it for some people. It's absolutely worth it for some people. I felt it was worth it for me. I bought it without being sponsored. I mean, I'm an affiliate with them now, and actually, but that came after. And so I wanted to try it, before I interviewed Dr. John Jaquish, because I wanted to sort of see what it was like without, being, influenced by a working relationship. And I liked it. I when I did that steadily for, a month, I absolutely found that I got very good results. But it's like anything. It doesn't work unless you do it, unless you use it. if you use it, it's very good. It gets, most of the major muscle groups. I think that, tidying things up with a few extra exercises that I personally like to do, I find that benefits my workout. But it's, for most people, even serious athletes, it's very good. And that variable resistance, I do think that that's actually really good. Because it's matching your strength curve. This is actually what Nautilus did. I learned this recently, from Dr. Ben, who's a exercise physiologist, and wrote a book called 15 Minute Fitness, I think. Really nice guy. And he was one of these guys, back in the good old days of like Gold's Gym, and just getting jacked with Arnold and all the rest of the guys. He was sort of in that era, and but he's a PhD, and he's done a lot of work on this sort of stuff. And he was telling me too that Nautilus, how they designed that actually really perfectly matched the strength curve. And so you're going out and you're coming back, slowly, and all that sort of stuff. And it really matched your strength curve for the different muscle groups that you were working. So they actually did a good job. And he said that the bands were great. He said bands, and he wasn't talking specifically about X3. He was just talking about bands in general, because it more matches the strength curve. So, that is something that is good. There are other band systems. I've never tried them. So they're going to be using cheaper materials and all that sort of stuff. And sometimes you sort of buy them and you're like, okay, well, these are sort of crap. And then you end up buying the sort of the name brand one anyway, because, you want something of better quality. But, I'll leave that up to you. I don't know the benefits or the quality of the other ones, because I've never tried them. I've only tried the X3. I just, tried that, and I wanted to see it. But it's only good if you use it. It is very convenient. It's very portable. It's very light, so you can take it with you on trips. You can just have it in your house. That's very convenient. If you do use it, then you will absolutely save on gym memberships long term. You can also buy some dumbbells and some barbells, and to bring that with you. But it works really well for the exercise that it does. Because of the nature of it, you can only do certain directions, and so there are other things that you may want other equipment for. And I like doing other things with other equipment as well. But I think it covers a lot of good things. It's 10 to 15 minutes. You're done for the day for a workout. It's one set to failure. Great. So if you use it, it works very well, and it can be worth it. But if you don't think you'll use it as much as something else, then definitely not worth getting. It's like anything else, it's just like, what is the best diet, and usually people say is like, well, it's the one that you can stick to. So carnivore, I think physiologically is the most healthy and is biologically the most appropriate. But if you can't do it and you don't do it, it doesn't matter that other people are doing it and doing well with it if it's not doing it for you. So yeah, it's hard to say on what's good for each individual. But if you think it's something that you would use and you would use it consistently, then yes, I do think that it's worth it. Mary Jane, thank you very much. Opinion on alcoholic cirrhosis of the liver going on carnivore. So cirrhosis is scarring, and that's permanent damage. That's not going to heal that we know of. The rest of it will. And so if you get rid of all these different hepatotoxic things like sugar, like alcohol, and all these other plant toxins that have to get detoxified in your liver, you're going to de-stress that. The parts that are not scarred down and permanently damaged will start to heal. They'll start to get better, and they'll start to get more functional. And so, if you're not at the point of needing a liver transplant, or the person is not at the point of needing a liver transplant, then you can recover. The liver is really, really good at healing if you let it. And so if you're eating what you're supposed to eat and you're not stressing it out and you're not, hurting it with alcohol and sugar and other sorts of medications that can be harmful, or foods that can be harmful, plant foods that can be harmful, then you will recover and your liver will get better. Will it get back to normal function? Hard to say because it depends on how much viable tissue is left. But it will help. It will absolutely help, but it can't undo the permanent damage, unfortunately. Not that we know of anyway. A lot of stem cells in your liver, a lot of things can be rebuilt. So, hold out hope that it can repair itself enough to get back to normal function. But it just depends on how damaged it is, unfortunately. Cause your daddy 92. Thank you for the super chat. Am I allowed to fast if I'm trying to build muscle on carnivore? I'm as strict uh, as it comes, but only eat about 2-ish pounds of meat per day, 6'2" male. I don't think you need to fast on a carnivore diet. I think that the vast majority of benefits that you get from fasting comes from just not eating the wrong things, right? And so you're not eating the wrong things if you're on a carnivore diet. Now, if you have cancer and you need to keep your GKI down, that's a different story. But for normal situations, I don't think you need to fast. If you do have to fast, just from a logistics point of view, you're working really late or you're traveling or something like that, it's very easy to, and you feel good doing it. But I don't think you have to do that. If you want to do that, that's fine. But if you're trying to build muscle and you're trying to put on weight, then you need to eat. The Mongols, like Genghis Khan, they would routinely just go like 5 days without eating and just ravage the countryside. And then they'd eat 10 pounds of horse meat. So, you know, 5 days not eating, only eating once every 5 days, 10 pounds, that's 2 pounds a day. Right. So, that's about what they were doing, but, and probably drinking blood in between there as well. But, that's, it's something that if you're trying to put on muscle, you need to eat enough. When I'm putting on muscle and I'm working out, I need double the amount of what I'm eating. So just want to eat enough, especially if you're putting on muscle. If you want to fast for a couple days, you can, but you need refeed days. You'll be fine putting on muscle. If you fast for a day or so and you're working out, that's not going to hurt you. If you have fat stores, because you're going to be able to mobilize your fat stores. But you'll need sort of more on the other side. You'll need refeeds and things like that. But I just listen to your body. If your body's telling you it wants more food, I just give it to it. And if you're working out and lifting weights a lot and doing sprints, you'll put on muscle. You'll put on a lot of muscle as if you can eat as much food as your body wants. Don't stop believing. Thank you for the super chat. Hi. Where do you get your meat from in Perth? So I mostly go to Costco, but go to places like Spud Shed or the Beef Shed. That place is great. Big racks of beef and other cuts you can buy in like the big primal cuts. That's always cheapest. To buy the big vacuum sealed loaves of meat, and then you cut them up into your own steaks. That's always cheapest. And you can sort of look for deals. So Beef Shed is great. It has very good prices. Has a lot of grass-fed options as well. And that's really great. And in fact, they do it a bit better there because they actually sell grass-fed cheaper than they do grain-finished, because they're like, we're doing less to it. We're not putting it in a feedlot. We're not paying to have it, finished in a feedlot. So it actually costs less to produce, which is true. But it's just that, there aren't as much of it, and it's a niche market. And so, you charge more because less people want it, but they don't. They at least up until the last time I went there, they actually charge less for the grass finished stuff. Great. So that's a good option, is the Beef Shed. And then I went to Spud Shed the other day as well, and I got big, looks like grass finished because the fat is all yellow. Great. Scotch fillet, or sorry, not Scotch fillet, which is ribeye for Americans watching. Porterhouse, which are New York's for Americans, and it was $10 a kilo, right? That's cheap as hell. Like at Costco, the grain finished Porterhouse New York strips are like $32, $34 or something like that, because beef prices have gone way up in the last sort of year or two, and so that was a great price. So that's what you want to do. You want to go to a place that can do grass fed and finished if you can, and have good prices. So you can just sort of shop around, and when you see a good deal, just grab a few big loaves of that, keep them in your fridge, put the vacuum seal on. That's wet aging. You can keep it there for a month or so. If it's beef, don't do that. Don't try that crap with pork. Doesn't work. And or chicken or fish, just beef, maybe lamb, but the red meats anyway. And and so that's what I would do. Ivory Bell, thank you for the super chat. I'm not seeing a question attached, but I'll keep an eye out for it if it pops up. Tuna Boy, good to see you again. Part 2, prescribed aspirin, Plavix for 21 days and eat just fish. They prescribe you to eat just fish, or you just eat fish. Also, statin to reduce LDL to 70, level 70. Should I take the statin and continue on carnivore? Well, I personally think that continuing on carnivore is absolutely the right thing to do. I can't really give direct medical advice regarding prescriptions and what you should or shouldn't take. That's a conversation you need to have with your doctor. But I will say that what statins do and how they lower your LDL cholesterol is that they stop your body from being able to make the large buoyant LDL molecules, which are the ones that you want. Those are the ones that are good for you, that transport cholesterol, that do all the normal functions that LDL does, which you need to have. You have to have LDL. It is important. And you want the large buoyant LDL. The damaged, small, dense LDL, so the pattern B, so there's over 100 different kinds of LDL particles, right? Statins stop you from making one of the only ones you want, right? Or the starting point from what you want, because when it's dropping its load and it's changing, it will change between different particulate sizes. But the large buoyant ones are fine. They're the ones you want. They're the ones that do good work. The ones that do seem to be associated with heart disease are the small, dense LDL particles. Right? These are ones that are damaged by glycation and oxidation from having too high blood sugar or drinking alcohol or potentially seed oils and things like that. So statins don't reduce your SD-LDL. They reduce your large buoyant LDL, the ones that you actually would want, right? That aren't really associated with atherosclerotic, atherogenic cardiovascular disease, right? So, is that really what you want? That's something you have to sort of ask for yourself. Also, if you're eating a carnivore diet and your HDL is up and your triglycerides are down, then you almost certainly don't have many, if any, SD-LDL. You are likely will mostly have the large buoyant LDL anyway. So my LDL is raised, and I couldn't care less. In fact, I'm happy about that, because there are a lot of studies, one with over 11 million people, showing that higher LDL of any description, any particulate size, large buoyant or other, the more LDL you had in total, the longer you lived. And other studies showing the larger your LDL, the longer you lived, the less infections you had, the less cancer you had, the less problems you had. And some even showing the less heart disease and stroke you have. So I don't worry about that for myself. In the literature, in the drug company's own literature on statins, so this is as favorable for statins as it's ever going to come, they show that if you have had a heart attack and you take this statin as a preventative for having another heart attack, that after 5 years, at least 5 years or more being on a statin every single day, that this will, on average, extend your life by 5 days on average, 5 days on average. And if you have not had a heart attack or a cardiovascular event, that it will not extend your life whatsoever by taking a statin long term. So that's up to you on if that's something you want to take. Now, you're prescribed aspirin and Plavix. That sounds like something happened, and whether it's a TIA or a blockage that you had that was stented. but generally stents, you're going to be on dual antiplatelets like aspirin and Plavix for a year, and then you come off one of them and you stay on the aspirin generally for the rest of your life. So I don't really know, but I would say for me personally, I would personally continue carnivore 100% because that's what your body's designed to do. And even if you've had an issue like we talked about earlier in this session, you can have buildups and blockages and problems of another nature that have maybe built up, and it's not being caused by carnivore. And carnivore is going to reduce inflammation. It's going to reduce exposure to these other sorts of things that can be harmful. And I would contend that they would actually improve things. You can have other causes of stroke, and even other causes of heart attack that have nothing to do with diet. You have a hole in your heart and a clot that flicks over to the other side. That's going to cause a stroke or a TIA. Nothing to do with what you eat, really, apart from whatever's going to affect your DVT risk, right? So that would be me personally. I would think about the statin, but that has to be your decision and your decision made with your doctor. Aspirin and Plavix, they prescribe that. That's generally for a good reason. You don't want to be on that forever because you fall down and hit your head, you're going to have a problem. And the problem is generally surgical, and you can't do surgery on dual antiplatelets, right? Because people bleed out when they die. And so if you're bleeding inside your head and you're squashing your brain and you need surgery to remove that pressure, but you can't have surgery because you're on dual antiplatelets and you only had that big of a bleed because you're on dual antiplatelets, that's where the problem comes in. And that's sort of the bane of neurosurgeons' life is these medications, but they are necessary in some circumstances. So, that I would, certainly take, and then, have a discussion with your doctor about the statins and what you should do. But I personally, would 100% keep eating what you're biologically designed to eat. And that's what I do. Lee, thank you very much for the super chat. Not seeing a question, unfortunately, but maybe there's one down the chain. Biggie1212, thank you very much. You've mentioned in different videos that you avoid coffee, but see some potential benefit in caffeine pills. What is your take on caffeine pills as a source of caffeine consumption and frequency? So I don't necessarily see caffeine as a benefit. I see caffeine pills as a step down, like a nicotine gum to get you off cigarettes, right? So it's the lesser of two evils. So you're taking caffeine because you want caffeine, and you're avoiding the 150,000 other chemicals that exist in coffee. 150,000 chemicals in coffee. One of them is caffeine, and that's the only one you want, right? So if that's the only one you want, and you're not just drinking coffee because you just enjoy the social aspect, or God forbid, the horrible taste, then just have the caffeine, and then at least you're getting that pick me up, and you're not getting it with all the rest of the garbage. And that can be better than getting it with all the other stuff. And then you just, with a mind to sort of wean yourself off of that. And so I don't think that caffeine is of benefit. I think that it's something that you do better without, and you'll have better energy without. You'll have better mental focus and clarity. You'll certainly get better sleep, and that has knock-on effects. If you're not sleeping well, you'll have more adenosine. Caffeine blocks adenosine, and so you feel like you're not tired when in fact you are. That adenosine is building up, and you crash down and go, oh my God, and you take more caffeine, and then you sleep worse that night, and you start the whole process over, and it gets worse, and it gets worse, and it gets worse. And so there can be a bit of a period, when you're adjusting to coming off the caffeine and getting that adenosine buildup and all that sort of stuff. But eventually you'll feel better and you'll have better energy. That's what I experienced. That's what a lot of people that I've spoken, literally everyone that I've spoken to has come off coffee eventually after they get through the rough patch. And sometimes it is a rough patch for a few weeks even, that once they get through that, they feel a lot better. That's generally what I found. So, the frequency, so the frequency I would take as little as possible. Normally, like if someone's getting really, really bad headaches for caffeine withdrawals, maybe taking like a quarter of a no dose, like a 25 milligrams, right? So if a no dose is, there's different pill sizes, but if it's like say 100 milligrams, you cut that up into quarters. If it's a solid pill, and you just take that 25 milligrams, and if you're having a bad caffeine withdrawal headache, that can take you down from the caffeine headache, and sort of stave off that part of the withdrawal, and keep you less symptomatic. But it won't be a whole bunch that's going to really mess up your sleep and cause more withdrawals later. And so you can just take a little bit, until you don't really have headaches anymore, and then just get rid of them. Maybe you have some minor headaches, or maybe you don't have any, and then you can come off of it. So I would use as little as possible, with a view to come off completely. That's what I would recommend anyway. If that's just not what you can do, and you just need caffeine every day, and you're just not ready to give it up, then fine. Just have a caffeine pill instead of a cup of coffee, and you're going to have less of an issue with all the other stuff that coffee brings. But yeah, I think of caffeine pills as a step down to quitting and coming off completely. So Steve Carey, thank you very much for the super chat. He says that I've had PMR for 12 months, been on, I'm assuming prednisolone, started carnivore, been level 1 last week. Will this help my PMR? So I don't know what level 1 last week means. But started carnivore, been level 1 last week. So maybe you just started carnivore last week. Well, it's difficult to say if this is gonna help everyone. It certainly has helped other people in the past. This is anecdotal. So with these sorts of conditions, people have tried carnivore because of it, and have seemed to help. One of these things, when you have these sorts of issues, you really need to be as strict as possible with just red meat and water, and you just get rid of everything else. So no dairy, no eggs, not even any chicken, pork, or fish. Or certainly not farmed fish. Never eat farm. No one should ever eat farmed fish. And just red meat and water. Certainly no coffee. Certainly no tea. No caffeine pills. No sweeteners of any description, sugar or erythritol or stevia or artificial or other. And just eat meat. Just drink water, and you'll be much better off. And I would expect this to get better, but I don't have any studies that would prove that one way or the other. There may be studies on ketogenic diets or a fasting mimicking diet helping that, but I'm not aware of them myself. I haven't looked that up specifically. So yeah, but I do think it's worth a shot, and you'll be helped in so many other ways. This will help your body in a lot of other ways. But I think a lot of these things, like PMR, are likely a product. A lot of things are just directly a product of eating an inappropriate diet. And so, that's going to be improved by going back to an appropriate diet. So TH, thank you very much for the super chat. Gastric sleeve surgery 3 years ago. Can't eat much at one time. Started carnivore 2 weeks ago. Not eating much. Not hardly hungry. Is this okay? Should I be doing anything differently? Mostly beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. Yeah. Well, look, you just may need to eat more often, right? So yes, it's still going to be good doing carnivore. This is the most nutrient dense food that you're on the planet, especially for humans, and pretty for anything. And so that's of benefit, right? But you may absolutely need more food than your body can get at one time because of your gastric sleeve. So just try eating more than once throughout the day. Also, it's very important to not drink water within an hour or two of your meal, and certainly don't drink water with your meal. Maybe a sip to help, wash it down, but really try to limit that, because you need all that space available for food. Okay. You don't want to fill up any you don't have any dead space, right? So you're not filling up the dead space with water. You have no dead space, right? You have negative dead space, right? So you need to make sure that you're not drinking any water and taking up that space, okay? And just eat fatty meat. Focus on fat. Fat's very important. It's also more nutrient dense and energy dense, and so that is what you should be focusing on. And then just try eating more than once a day. Your hunger signals are going to be very different. They're never going to be like they were before if you're not eating carbohydrates or sugar or alcohol or these sorts of things. So go by taste. If meat still tastes good, if fatty meat still tastes good, that means you're hungry. You will physically fill up. However, if that's like, oh, it tastes delicious, but I really just don't, it doesn't, there's too much in there already, fine, stop, try it again in a few hours. And again, avoid the water. But yeah, you probably will need to eat more than once a day. But if you don't, and you try eating twice a day, and the second time you're just like, it's not really tasting good. I don't really feel like this is, doing anything for me. Fine, that's totally fine. But just see how you go. The King in Hiding, thank you very much for the super chat. 2-year carnivore, prostate is healing, but reversible. Well, it depends on what's going on and how far gone it is. A lot of these things are reversible. You can sort of shrink things down and certainly help. If it's, I don't know if there's a cancer issue there or anything like that. I do think that cancer is benefited by eating properly for a number of reasons that we sort of spoke about earlier. And so you can reverse a lot of issues. Will you reverse everything? Don't know, but there are all prostate issues and hypertrophy and even cancer have from the work of Professor Ben Bickman at BYU. He goes into how this is very strongly linked to insulin resistance and eating a lot of carbs, and it's really fed by carbs and insulin resistance. So getting away from that can absolutely reverse those issues and heal them up. And Dr. Sean O'Mara, who I've had on the podcast a couple of times, really nice guy, doctor over in Minnesota. He had exactly that problem, and he had a barely trickle stream, so he had enlarged prostate. He ended up going carnivore, doing sprinting, doing his whole protocol that he's now coaching other people with, and get rid of their visceral fat, get them healthy, and get them metabolically fit. And all of a sudden, he's peeing like it's Niagara Falls, like he's a teenager again, So yes, you can reverse a lot of issues. I don't know exactly what your prostate issues are, but this can reverse a lot of them. Yes. Avatar 007, thank you very much for the super chat. I'm not seeing a question attached, but maybe there's one down the chain. Kathy McDonald, thank you very much. She says 67 years old, carnivore for 6 weeks, no weight loss, underactive thyroid since 18, meds mess up my heart. Is there a natural thyroid supplement I can take? Well, there's you can get desiccated thyroid, like pig thyroid, called nat thyroid or natural thyroid in Australia, and that's like, what's it called? And I guess it's called like Armor or something like that in North America. So, excuse me. So, yes, there are natural thyroid supplements that are just thyroid. There's just a bit of desiccated thyroid that have, and that's actually good because usually thyroxine is just T4, but there's T0, T1, T2, T3, and T4, right? So in the natural thyroid, you get all of them. Okay. T3 is the most active. That's the one that really is doing the work in your body. And not everybody converts T4 into T3. And so that's not helpful for them. And you can get slow release T3 if you're one of those people that doesn't convert. So you check your T4, T3, and free T4 and free T3, and you check and you say, oh yeah, T4 is going way up, but T3 is still staying low. Okay, well, you're not converting that over. There does also seem to be an interesting relationship between people who have lost their ankle jerk reflexes, so their Achilles tendon reflex, and the ability to for thyroid issues in general, but also the people that aren't able to convert T4 into T3, so they have very low T3 and they lose their ankle jerk for some reason. That's an association, but it does seem to be pretty consistent, and so that's something you check is for ankle jerk. And but yeah, you can do that. Carnivore will help a lot of issues. I don't know if you have thyroid issues since you were 18. Have you been checked for Hashimoto's? Have you been checked for other autoimmune issues? Is that why your thyroid is dysfunctional or less functional? Carnivore diet, just meat and water, just red meat and water, I should say. That can help Hashimoto's. That can help other autoimmune issues because you're just not taking in the things that your bodies are reacting to, and so that could help, and that could help improve your thyroid. If your thyroid is permanently damaged and you have to take thyroid medications long term, you may have to keep doing that. It can't heal the dead, unfortunately, not yet anyway. And so it's it may be that you need to take some thyroid medication. You can try the desiccated thyroid, and that's just a prescription, just like the other ones are. They're not as commonly prescribed because most people don't really know about it. Most doctors don't really know about it unless you sort of have a specialized practice for that. But yeah, that's what I would do. Weight loss is a tricky one, especially when you have thyroid dysfunction, especially when you have hormonal disruption in other ways, leptin resistance, things like that. So you need to try to correct those things as well. They can correct over time just being on a carnivore diet, but it's going to be slow going. And so especially with things like thyroid, it is helpful to bring you up to a physiological level with medication early on. It may be that you can come off of it later, but at the moment, it sounds like you do need some. So I would, talk to your doctor about that, and that can help with weight loss. But just be patient. Your body's healing. It took 67 years to get into the position you are now. It's going to take longer than 6 weeks to get out of it, right? So as the analogy I like is that there's no shortcuts. You walk 10 miles into the woods, you got to walk 10 miles out. And so it's not going to take 67 years, but it will take some time. So just be patient with that, and try to address the underlying try to address the deficiencies that you have. You're addressing the underlying medical issue, which is properly eating, but you may still need to supplement and top yourself up with certain vitamins, minerals, and hormones for the short term anyway. And if your thyroid is permanently damaged to the extent that it can't support you fully, then maybe long term you might need to take it as well. Orthodox Methodist, thank you very much for the super chat. Hey doc, for starting meat only as a male, what is the most optimal fat to protein ratio for cutting back body fat and getting lean? Thank you. So it is individual. So the thing is that I aim for about 1 to 1 grams, and I find that you don't necessarily lose a whole bunch of fat by just. I mean, look, you can starve yourself into a smaller pant size. That's, everyone knows that, but you get sort of, if you're chronically sort of under eating, you do slow your metabolism. So it comes at a cost, and you sort of slow your metabolism because your body's like going, oh, hey, we're in a famine. We're starving here. So we gotta store this. We gotta protect this energy, and or else we're going to die. We're going to run out of energy and we're going to die. So I think it comes at too big of a cost. And so if you're just working out and you're pushing yourself and you're lifting weights and you're doing sprinting, and you're eating fatty meat and to your body's content, and you're eating until it stops tasting good, you will lose fat. Now, if you're getting ready for like a bodybuilding competition, you're trying to lean out towards the end, then maybe you need to cut back a little bit. And Vince Garanda, called the Iron Guru, like he has whole protocols on how to naturally get shredded for competition on a carnivore diet. He wasn't calling it a carnivore diet then, but he figured this out. He's saying you just eat meat and eggs, and like steak and eggs, steak and eggs, steak and eggs. And that's all you eat. And especially when you're getting ready for a competition, like that's all you eat. And you trim the hell down and you'll lose a whole bunch of body fat. So you can look at that. You can look at Robert Sykes, called Keto Savage. That's his brand, and he's a professional bodybuilder and a coach, and he talks about how to very carefully reduce the amount you're taking in order to get absolutely shredded. And you have people like Richard Smith, who's also a professional bodybuilder, was a professional bodybuilder, since moved on to other ventures, and he won the European bodybuilding pro championship as a carnivore. And he said you get down to like 2%, just absolutely just shredded. And so you can look at his work to see how he got that cut. But for normal people, not trying to get into like competition, 2% fitness sort of thing, 2% body fat sort of thing, you can just listen to your body and you just eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good. I aim for about a gram or more of fat, and I adjust that to what my body needs. If I start getting a bit constipated, I just add more fat. So I don't count my grams, I don't count my macros, I don't count that out. I sort of eyeball it. I generally go for about a ribeye's worth of fat. And if it's a bit too lean, like it is in Australia, I add butter to it. And so that's good for me. If you're working out and you're lifting weights, your body may want a little more protein or a little more fat. And you'll tell that by your taste, and you'll tell that by whether or not you're getting constipated. And so I would just listen to that. So there's not a perfect ratio for everyone. Everyone's going to be slightly different. So, yeah, that's the thing. There's no one size fit all as far as macros are concerned. It's just one size fit all as what we're supposed to eat, which is fatty meat. That's what we're designed to eat as a species. So I just keep doing that and listen to your body, and you'll lean out, and you'll get lean, and you'll get muscular if you're working out. But you have to work out. That's a major thing. Zill, thank you very much for the super chat. There's no question attached, but maybe one down the road. Fief Bear, thank you very much for the super chat. My allergies were terrible, allergic to dust, grass, and trees. All trees, probably certain trees. Carnivore plus injections have improved symptoms. That's great. Tips on keeping histamine low and any benefits from cycling in and out of OTs, over-the-counter allergy meds. Well, I personally just don't want to be putting a whole bunch of chemicals in my body all the time. And so if you can go without them sometimes, I think that's beneficial. Just using them if you have to, if you're just feeling very symptomatic, and just use them at that point. I get pretty drowsy and lethargic when I'm on allergy meds. So I don't like taking those. So that would be, for me, I would just sort of avoid that. So histamines from your allergies is going to be, just trying to avoid those allergies. Dust is obviously, you can try to keep dust out of your house, just with regular cleanings. Grass, presumably pollens and trees and things like that. That's usually just seasonal. They will hit harder at certain times. And so just avoiding those exposures. Some people have what they call a histamine response to different meats, if they're aged or they're this or they're that. Could be whatever it is, people are reacting to it and they're not having a good time with it, so avoid it. So whatever meat, if any meat sort of makes you feel a bit off, just eat something else. And that's the main thing. But yeah, I would I'm not an allergist, so I don't know like the specifics about how long you should be on and off these sorts of things, but I just tend to try to avoid those things whenever possible. If I haven't taken allergy, and that's the thing too, I haven't taken allergy pills in years and years and years at this point. I just haven't needed them, and I would normally have quite bad allergies as well. But yeah, I don't take them at all. But previously I would only take them if I was very symptomatic. I don't like putting things in my body, chemicals and medications in my body. I sort of have that idea, like my body's a temple. I don't want to put anything in it that's not supposed to be there. So I would just use it as little as possible so that you can, maintain a relatively low symptom or symptom-free life and just enjoy your life. Roland Thompson, thank you very much for the super chat. He says my father is on medication, including warfarin to thin his blood. He also had his gallbladder out a while back and is quite overweight. Any advice for him starting carnivore given his current condition? Well, I think that it would be very beneficial to him. I don't know why he's on the warfarin, but there can be many different reasons for that. And either way, it may or may not help the underlying condition, and he may or may not ever be able to come off the warfarin, but it will help him lose weight. It will help him improve his health. It will help him be much better off long term, live longer, happier, and healthier with more quality of life. I firmly believe that, and I've seen that happen every time people do this and are able to succeed at it. And there's some people that sort of try it and it doesn't quite work well for them, and they give up for whatever reason. Or some people, when I work with them, they're having a particular problem. There's every single time I've worked with someone and talked to them either online or just in chats or in comments or whatever, we've been able to figure something out. And it's either they're not eating enough fat, they're still eating other things, they're having sweeteners and coffee and artificial nonsense and all these other sorts of things. And so, or their expectations are a bit unrealistic, and they're saying, well, I've seen people that it was like, oh, this didn't work for me because, I didn't lose the weight that I wanted to, which sucks because I felt so good and had such great energy and came off my medications and stopped having autoimmune issues. And, so it's a shame that carnivore didn't work for me. It's like, sounds like carnivore worked great for you. It's just that, you didn't have the exact, results that you wanted with your weight, but you were getting a lot of other benefits. So focus on the benefits, focus on the good things that are happening to you. Also, in those cases, quite often I ask them, okay, what exactly were you eating? And I'm like, oh yeah, just meat and water. I was like, okay, so no coffee, no tea, no sweeteners, no, anything. Oh, well, I would have coffee and I had erythritol and I had this and I had that. I was like, okay, so look, there's more going on here. You weren't just doing fatty meat and water. You're adding in these other things, and those things like artificial sweeteners, like I don't care what anybody says or what any study says, because I see people who use those things, they stall their weight loss. They have trouble losing weight. So, well, but there's a study put out by Coca-Cola and funded by Pepsi that says that, you can definitely lose weight with that. Couldn't care less. Could not, literally could not care less. There is nothing else on this earth that I care less about than that study, than a study like that. So, and in either way, it doesn't matter what your study says. It doesn't matter what your theory is. It doesn't matter how smart you are. If it doesn't agree with experiment, it's wrong. And so when I see people do this and they are constantly stalling and having problems with their weight and their hormones, because stevia can affect your hormones, apparently. There's a study in mice looking at just giving them an equivalent of 1 can of diet soda a day worth of stevia. And they found that it reduced their fertility rate by 55%, right? That's not good. Okay, what the hell is that doing? What the hell is that doing to us? What is that doing to you? What is that doing to your hormones, right? And so, got a little off track there, but that's something to think about and understand that when we're doing this, that these things we're putting in our body, just because we're told by the people selling it to us, this is totally safe and it's fine, it's keto friendly and it's great, he doesn't have carbs. It doesn't matter. It's not supposed to go in your body. It didn't exist 50,000 years ago. It was never in our original diet. So don't eat it. As to your father and his gallbladder, that's fine. You can still do carnivore with gallbladder. You're still a human being. You don't, designation for human being is not owning a gallbladder. And so, but what he'll have to do is he might have to split up his meals throughout the day, because if he eats a very large amount of fat and he doesn't have enough bile to absorb it, it's going to go out and he's going to get diarrhea, especially if he's drinking coffee or tea or using erythritol or stevia or any other sweetener, artificial sweetener. And so you just may have to split up his meals throughout the day so he's not getting diarrhea. However, a lot of people make what's called a pseudo gallbladder, which is just an outpouching of the common bile duct, and it works just like a gallbladder. And so there are a lot of people that just do OMAD carnivore, high fat, don't have any problem, absorb all of it. So they would be one of these people that almost certainly would have developed that pseudo gallbladder. So that could have been him too. So I would just do that. I would just eat meat, just drink water, get rid of everything else, and he'll do better. He'll do a lot better. Holly Ruth, thank you very much. Rheumatoid arthritis for 30 years, carnivore for 6 months, high inflammatory markers. Still, is heart a problem because of inflammation? LDL 232, HDL 136, triglycerides 39, 5'2", 94 pounds. That looks great. So I personally don't look at just your raw LDL numbers, because there are 100 different kinds of LDL. So it really matters what kind you have, not just your raw numbers. And the raw numbers, if you have higher, lower rates of infection, lower rates of cancer, lower rates of all-cause mortality. You live longer. Okay, so your HDL is fantastic. Your triglycerides are excellent, and your ratio is phenomenal. So I would not be worried about that from a cardiovascular point of view, personally. I don't know which inflammatory markers you're talking about, possibly your high sensitivity CRP. And yes, if your HSCRP is elevated past a certain point, that can incur a risk for heart disease. Now, that can be because you get inflammation and damage to your artery walls, and your body's it's damaging and then repairing and damaging and repairing and damaging and repairing. You're getting like a buildup of sort of scar tissue and all that sort of junk. But I still think that will reduce as well, and I think that will go down as well. And you having your HDL high and your triglycerides low, and likely your blood sugar low and your insulin low and your HbA1c low, you've now reversed metabolic syndrome, and you don't have a risk for diabetes, which are far higher risk factors, far greater risk factors for developing heart disease than just general inflammation. And it's up there with smoking, how risky diabetes is, right? So what I'm sort of curious is how is your rheumatoid arthritis doing? It's been 6 months. Whether or not your inflammatory factors or RA factor are up, I would expect that your symptoms are better, and that's what's really important. And so, you can have your blood levels be whatever they are, but if you're symptomatically low, not having flare-ups and having low inflammation, then that's a good sign that this is going in the right direction, isn't it? So, and it's definitely going in the right direction based on your HDL and triglyceride numbers. I would say that that's very positive. So yeah, that's what I would go on is how you're feeling. Are you getting rheumatoid flare-ups? Are you getting, inflammation all over your body and racked with pain, and, take half an hour, 45 minutes to get out of bed in the morning? That's what I would be going on. And if you're not having that, then that's a very good sign that you have much less inflammation in your body, which is great if that's the case. Okay. Lorenzo, thank you very much for the super chat. Hi, Anthony. Could you make a video response to Nutrition Made's simple take on the carnivore diet? I can take a look at it. Some of those things just bug the living hell out of me. So I just don't want to just lose brain cells by doing it. I'll take a note of that, and I'll sort of write it down and nutrition. I'm sure it's going to be awful. See, that's the thing, we also, it's eating right, but also sort of living a low stress life, things like that. This causes stress. It's just awful to watch this stuff. So in view of trying to keep my cortisol levels low, I tend to just avoid these morons. But but it's fair enough to sort of watch and see if they've, I don't want to be missing something. I don't want to be in an echo chamber. But the problem is I've seen so many of their things so long. It's never a new argument. It's never anything new. It's always the same damn thing every time. It's just like, oh my God, like how many times you have to disprove the same thing before it just dies. But yeah, I'll take a look at it. Made simple. Carnivore diet. Great. We should probably slow down or stop on the super chats, guys, because I do need to take off in sort of the next 45 minutes because I have an appointment. And I still got a lot to go through. So I want to make sure that I get to all of these. So maybe we'll just try to get through all of these, and then if there are more questions after that, we can do those. Low carb, low drama. Thank you very much for the super chat. Fun fact: the Keys fella said in 1997, "There's no connection whatsoever between cholesterol and food and cholesterol in blood." Hey, there you go. And we've known that we've known that all along. Dietary cholesterol doesn't matter unless you are a chicken or a rabbit. That's fucking great. Yeah, thank you for that. That's I'm going to copy that. And can I copy this off the screen? No, it's not letting me. Can I do it off that? Come on. Well, anyway, yeah. So Keys, and that is something that we know. I mean, there was a study where they gave people like 36 eggs a day for like, I don't know, 4 or 6 weeks or something like that, and found like just no change in their cholesterol levels, just nothing. Right. So your LDL will go up when you fast. That's a thing. That's a known phenomenon that your LDL goes up. Well, it's way up when you fast, right? So it's probably more of a symptom of being in ketosis or on a ketogenic diet and a low carb diet or a no carb diet that your LDL goes up because you're mobilizing fat, because you're running on fat. Go figure, right? And so, that's it's just another piece in the puzzle that shows that this is just not a thing. This is just not what we've been told that it was, and warned that it was, and threatened that it was. And so there you go. Yeah, so that's great. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. He would know. He's known all the time that this stuff is just not. It's just not a thing ever, and yet, he knows it because he was the one hiding it, Tony Triana, thank you very much for the super chat. Would Wagyu meat be good fat and protein ratio for what supplements or free what supplements should I take on a carnivore diet? So you don't really need to take supplements on a carnivore diet. Most people don't need to take supplements on a carnivore diet. Most people coming to a carnivore diet are nutrient deficient. So you might benefit from some supplements, some targeted supplements early on if you have a specific deficiency. But I don't think anyone should take any supplement for any reason apart from if they have a diagnosed deficiency in something. And but the best supplement for any nutrient you may need is liver. Liver has everything, and it's very dense. You just don't want too much of it because you can go too far the other way, right? You don't want too much of a good thing. Okay. Wagyu meat is yes, very, very fatty. It's different kinds of fat. When you're getting just grain fed all the time, you get more linoleic acid, more omega-6s, less omega-3s, and and it just sort of changes the chemical composition of the fat as well. So it's not the same. It's not exactly the same. It's still good, but you may need some other things as well. Add in a bit of liver, should be fine once or twice a week. And then just check your bloods, check your vitamins and minerals and so on, hormones, whatever you want to check, and just see what you're doing and how you're tracking, and it's going up, it's getting into a right range. If you're very low on B12, folate, magnesium, zinc, vitamin D, those will come up on a carnivore diet, especially if you add a bit of liver, but you're going to catch up quicker if you target that, eat a bit more liver, or have take like a vitamin D supplement or some magnesium or zinc or something like that. And so that can be a good idea, especially early on. Usually you don't need it long term. Once you've caught up, you'll stay up generally. Some people, especially like with folate, keep an eye on that. Some people just don't process folate as well, especially people with the MTHFR gene mutation. You're just going to need a bit more folate, and so you're going to need to eat a bit of liver a couple times a week. So just be mindful of that. Fief Bear, thank you very much for the super chat. Do you produce extra bile to break down fat when exercising? Any delta in bile production, change in bile production with cardio versus lifting weights? Is bile more potent depending on the food sources? Want to avoid the bathroom? Um, I don't think it's more potent depending on the food sources, but if you are eating whole fat and in the tissue, the whole adipose tissue, the cellular structure that fat is contained within, then that is sort of like a a time released capsule or pill. It doesn't go boom, hit you all at once, and then just run through your system. It is released more slowly, it's just sort of broken down and broken down and broken down, and gives your body a chance to respond and react and release bile. And so people tend to absorb it better that way. Whereas if you're having like tallow or even butter, or more rendered fat, then that can go through quicker. Not everybody. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I have never noticed a problem with that. But some people do. Some people absolutely do. And so I don't think that well, it's hard to say if we're producing more bile when exercising. I would hazard to guess that when we are exercising, when we're working out more, and when we're increasing our body's demand for nutrients such as fat, that you will produce more bile as a result of that. And so I think that does change with the amount of fat that your body will want in general based on your body's demand. So I do think that it's almost certain that does that. You don't see that in the physiology textbooks. They just give general numbers like on average people produce, men can produce like 800 mils to a liter of bile, women produce 600 to 800 mils. It's just a range. They're not wondering why. They're not wondering if it changes. Maybe somewhere someone has asked that question and tested it, but you don't find it in a general physiology textbook that I've ever seen. I've only seen those general numbers. But yeah, I think I don't know of any change in from cardio versus lifting. I think it's just going to be dependent on your body's demands. And if you're lifting a lot of weights and you're doing that, heavily, and you're working out, then your body's going to need a certain amount. If you're doing, depends on how much cardio you're doing, depends on how much lifting you're doing, because you're going to be taxing and putting specific demands on your body depending on what you're doing and how long you're doing it for. But yeah, I do think that you're going to produce more bile if you have a higher demand for rebuilding your body structures. JW, thank you very much for the super chat. I'm in a calorie excess on carnivore to build muscle, and it's too much food. I am so full all the time. Is it necessary to build muscle on carnivore? Don't force feed yourself. Never force feed yourself. If you're on first of all, don't count calories. It's stupid. It can give you a rough guide and estimate, but it is so inaccurate. First of all, there are dozens of different kinds of carbohydrates. They all have different, unique, individual chemical reactions inside your body because they are unique organic molecules, and they have hormonal effects, and they have physiological effects that are different and unique. Okay. And the same with the amino acids, and same thing with your fatty acids. These are all unique, individual, complex organic molecules that have unique individual chemical reactions and hormonal reactions in your body. Okay. You cannot boil them down to the heat energy released when you burn them. We are not combustion engines. That's not how we use them. It's just not a good model. It can tell you something. It can give you a rough guide, but in real life, it's not accurate. It's a stencil. It's not, the thing itself. So your body knows what it needs. Your body is able to track these things and understand the chemical interactions much better than we do. We have billions of interactions and chemical interactions in our body every millisecond. You have trillions of cells. They have trillions of molecules and chemicals in each of those cells. They are all reacting constantly. All your cells are interacting with other cells constantly. You have constant flow of blood and chemicals and nutrients going in and around your body all the time. This is one of the most complex systems that has ever existed in this universe. Okay. Life is extraordinarily complex, right? You're never going to figure it out by saying calories in, calories out. Sorry. It's way more complicated than that. And so, it's, I'm not talking directly at you. I'm talking to the people pushing that sort of idea. But you don't need to worry about that. You need to worry about what your body's telling you. So eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good. You get a negative feedback. You get a cookie when you do something good and your body likes it. So you eat meat, it tastes good. Oh my God, that tastes good. So you get a reward for that. Good boy, do it again. So you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. But the more you do, the less reward you get back. So you get negative feedback. So it actually dampens down that positive experience that you have with it until it gets down to a neutral. Like, I don't really like this anymore. I don't need this anymore. Or you keep doing it, like it sounds like you may be, and I've seen other people doing, which is you keep eating past that point and you get negative feedback because your body is telling you in no uncertain terms, stop it. You're done. We're done. We don't want any more. Cut it out. Right. And so, if the idea is that, well, in the wild, we just have to eat until we puke because we may die later or whatever, that doesn't make any sense. Why we would never get satiated then. We would never have a point that we just say, ooh, I really don't want to do this anymore. Right. So that doesn't make sense. Every animal in the wild knows when to stop eating. They just keep eating until they just go, yep, that's it. I don't want to eat anymore. They do something else or they sleep, right? Usually sleep. And so we're the same. And our physiology is going to be the same. So just keep eating meat, fatty meat, until it stops tasting good. You'll do fine. You will put on muscle faster than you've ever found it possible before. You need to work out. You got to lift weights. You got to do sprints. You got to work hard. Great. Sounds like you are. And then you just need to eat enough. You don't need to force feed yourself ever. And so just try eating at least twice a day. That's it. If you eat a big meal during the day, you're going to get tired. You're going to get lethargic. You're not going to be able to work out properly. So time it appropriately. But try eating more than once a day. Maybe eat like a half meal if you have to eat before you work out or during the workday, right? And then try to eat as much as you can later on. If you're able to do that, if you're able to eat enough throughout the day, you're going to slam on muscle if you're working out. So I wouldn't worry about that. Don't force feed yourself. Don't go past. Don't think that you know more than your body does, because trust me, you don't. None of us do. None of us ever will be able to. No one will ever be able to work out a single equation that you can plug in numbers and figure out everything for the trillions of interactions every millisecond in each cell, in the trillions of cells that we have, and all the communication that we have between them. There's not enough paper, on Earth, to write that equation. Okay. And there's just too many variables. There's too many things that don't remain constant that you'd have to plug in. You'll never be able to figure all that out. So don't worry about it. You don't have to. Your body does it for you. It does it automatically. Just listen to your body and just let it go. Let it do its thing. Tamsin, thank you very much for the super chat. Hi, please speak on the subject of histamines with aged meat, wet and dry, dry aging, wet and dry aging, and dried meat like biltong and dry wars, which is like the South African dried sausages, which are delicious. As long as you don't get all the too many spices. I tend to avoid it because they do use spices, but it's good. And is it okay to eat meat leftovers for a couple days kept in the fridge, of course? Yeah, well, look, I mean, I make a brisket and I just leave it on the counter. I can't really do that anymore because we have a cat. And the cat will just go after it. But I used to do that. I used to make a brisket and just leave it on the counter and just cut off hunks of meat every day. And just that's what I would eat. And as long as you don't have flies or pets and, wild animals like teenagers coming around, then you can do that. So it's fine. Meat lasts a hell of a lot longer than people give it credit for. I mean, think about it. You smoke something, you cook something, you roast something. That's like putting it and you have it in there for 16, 18 hours at high heat. That's like that's like putting something in the autoclave, at the hospital. I mean, that's sterile. You could use that in surgery, after that thing comes out. So not that you would, for any reason, but it's sterile basically. And so, unless you have flies coming on it or things touching it and doing whatever and introducing bacteria to it, nothing's there to grow, right? And so I don't worry too much about that, but obviously you can put it in the fridge. If there are people that have that what we are calling a histamine reaction. I don't know if it's actually histamines. That's just what people refer to it as. But for some reason, people have a response when they have leftovers and or aged meat or aged cheese. They don't seem to do well with it. That's sort of going to be individual. Like, so if you notice that you don't do well with leftovers, then you probably should avoid it. If wet aging is when it's in that vacuum pack and it's just breaking down. I know that some people have said that can be a problem. Like if they hang meat, then that just let it sort of breaks down and gets more tender and more flavorful. That they have problems with that. Michaela Peterson mentioned that was a problem for her. So she goes towards lamb. She likes the lamb better because they don't really hang the meat because it's younger. It doesn't need to tenderize. So just try that. I mean, I like wet aging. I don't always dry age like the whole thing. I'll cut up the individual steaks and just let them dry out a bit. Works great. Gets much more intense flavor, concentrates the flavor, and browns better as well, and tastes really good. So biltong dry wars, again, these are dried. They're added seasonings, generally vinegar, although some may put in soy sauce or something awful like that. So just be careful. But it's really just sort of a trial and error thing. If you try something and you wet age it and you're like, whoop, that didn't work, then don't do that again. So a lot of people are just going to have to do this trial and error. We don't really know this is histamine or what in God's name is going on, but people are reacting. Some people are reacting to something in there. And so if you're one of those people and you're reacting, then just avoid that. And again, keep a diary. You eat certain things, you're prepared in a certain way. You felt great or you didn't feel great. Great. Now you have something to connect that to, and you've done it 4 times. You've gotten the same result 4 times. There you go. Now you know what your body reacts to. So a lot of these things have trial and error, and just just play around with it, and you'll find what works for you pretty well. Rin, thank you very much for the super chat. Forgive me if this has already been asked already, arrived late. But what about people that don't have a gallbladder? How dare you? Yeah, no, it's fine. So for people that don't have a gallbladder, it's just that you aren't going to be able to necessarily store all the bile in one place at one time, and so you will just be dripping this out of your liver. So your liver makes bile, not your gallbladder, right? It's just gallbladder just stores it. So you'll still make bile. That's fine. You can still absorb fat, but it's just going to be sort of dripping out constantly into your intestines, and so you may not be able to eat as much fatty meat at the same time as you will as you would have otherwise. Okay, and that's fine. It just means that you need to split up your meals throughout the day so that you don't have diarrhea, you don't get loose stools. Some people will form what's called a pseudo gallbladder, which is like an outpouching of the common bile duct, and that will work exactly the same as a gallbladder, and it'll store bile, squish it out, and you should be fine. So there are a lot of people that don't have a problem eating like one big meal a day with a lot of fat. And I do realize that you asked that about an hour ago, so you probably would have heard my answer with the other person. So there it is again. Mission from God, thank you very much for the super chat. Do you have an opinion on heart flutters, palpitations? I'm only eating 2 pounds of ribeye per day with electrolytes, and right before bedtime, the flutters come on. Right before bedtime. Sometimes strong and sometimes mild. So flutters, palpitations. I mean, it's careful. We need to be careful about what we're saying and be specific. Like if it's just a strong heartbeat that's noticeable, especially at night when we're trying to sleep and we just hear it in our ears, I'm like, what the hell is that? I don't worry too much about that. If it's too fast, or it's an irregular beat, then you need to get that checked out. You need to get an EKG or EKG, ECG, called it different things in different worlds, different parts of the world, just to see what the hell is going on. Dr. Baker just did a video saying that a lot of times, if you are having flutters and maybe getting like tachycardic, it could be that your blood pressure is a little low, that you're dehydrated, and that's a very common thing. So you can ramp up your water if your heart rate is going a bit too fast or faster than normal or whatever. But what I've noticed, like the big, heavy heartbeats, but it's the same rate and the same rhythm, that is just some sort of adaptation period that probably isn't to do with electrolytes or dehydration. Maybe some dehydration, try it anyway. But I think that has probably something to do with ketones, because a lot of people say, well, when I'm doing this, I get this big heavy heartbeat, or they call them palpitations or whatever, because it's just something different, right? And so that generally people will refer to anything different with their heart as palpitations. Then they eat carbohydrates and it goes away, right? Where our cardiac myocytes, just like our brain, actually prefer to run on ketones, and they run better on ketones. And so I think it's probably something to do with that. I have no evidence for this apart from just me looking at what's going on and trying to make a guess. But when people have high ketones, their heart's going boom, boom, boom. Well, your heart's running on rocket fuel, and it's been on crude oil for its previous existence, and now it's just like, yeah, let's do it. So it can be that's just your body just has been overcompensating for poor fuel for so long. Now it's got the fuel, and now it's working like crazy, and it'll settle down. And I think that probably has something to do with the ketones, because when people start eating carbs, it suppresses that, and you eat carbs and you suppress your ketones. But if you're having a racing heart, or you're having something else, you can try the water. But if it's going over 100, or it's an irregular beat, like you feel your pulse, and it's not just a metronome, boom, 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 boom. If it's sort of off from that, you need to get it checked out and just get that looked at. You can certainly check your electrolytes. You're already taking electrolytes. It's very uncommon for people to get low potassium and things like that in general, and especially on Carnivore. I just did a consult with someone the other day, and they had slightly low potassium. They were completely asymptomatic for it, so who knows, it could be sort of normal for them. But that was literally the one person I've ever seen with low potassium on blood tests on a carnivore diet ever. And he wasn't symptomatic. He did not have any of the palpitations or anything like that. So that's what I would suggest. Drink water, check your pulse rate and rhythm. If there's something off, get it checked out. And if it's just the big heavy heartbeats, but everything else is normal and water doesn't help it, I think it's probably something to do with the ketones, and it will sort itself out. And it's just going to be a bit weird for a while. But I had them, and they lasted a few weeks, and they went away. That was it. So good luck with that. Meet Chance and Maddie. Nice to meet you. 75th birthday shout out to Grandpa Greg. He is an ex-vegan, a lymphoma survivor, and killing on Carnivore. That's awesome. Well, happy birthday, Grandpa Greg. It's actually my dad's birthday on the 14th. So I was just on the phone with him before this. So that's awesome. Happy birthday to Greg. And any wisdom to stay on the program? Well, look, just focus on the benefits, focus on the good things, focus on how you feel, how your brain works, the energy levels that you have. I do know that a lot of people that age, when they go on this, their brain works a lot better. They're sharper. They have more energy. They have more zest for life. Their testosterone goes up. Their musculature goes up. They're more physically active, mentally active, and just focus on those good things. Focus on all those good things. Now, it could be that you get so good that you say, hey, I can just eat whatever I want again. You will not feel so good anymore. So just remember that, focus on that, and remember what's doing it for you. Remember what's giving that to you. So focus on the good things, Focus on how great you feel, and just remember that this is coming from eating this way, and it will go away again if you stop eating this way. So good luck to you, Greg. Happy birthday, and keep killing it. That's great. Matthew Lyons, thank you for the super chat. Thanks for everything, Doc. Carnivore has taken my performance and athleticism to a new level. Awesome. What are your thoughts on herbalists like Dr. Sebi? Plants as medicine always made sense to me, but not as a lifestyle or diet. Yeah, well, certainly as medicine. That's the only time I'd ever use it. Things can be used as medicine, but I mean that was always the thing. People said, "Well, garlic is a natural antibiotic, so you should eat a lot of garlic." And I was just like, "Well, why do I want to take antibiotics all the time? You don't take amoxicillin all the time. You say that that's really bad. You don't want to do that. So why would it be good to do it in plant form?" And so, yeah, look, we can use things medicinally. One problem with the herbal remedies is that just like coffee, if you're drinking coffee to get the caffeine, you're getting 150,000 other chemicals with the caffeine, and that's the same thing that you're doing with these different herbals. So yeah, maybe there's something in those herbals that are beneficial, but it's also the case that you're going to get a lot of other things that aren't necessarily beneficial, and so you're getting the bad with the good, which is why we moved to pharmacology. And yes, that industry has been thoroughly corrupted, and I'm not a big fan of their mentality and mindset. And there was I forget who said it, but it was like a whistleblower sort of guy who'd worked in the industry, and he I want to say Cali Means, but I don't think it was. Whoever it was, they said they were talking to a pharmaceutical exec, and the exec said, like, you know what, my favorite drug that we make is, and they're thinking, oh well, maybe something wonderful like curing childhood leukemia or something beneficial to humanity. And he said, my favorite drugs that we make are the ones that cause side effects that we also have other drugs to treat. That guy needs to be put in front of a firing squad. That's sick. That is sick shit. I mean, that's Nuremberg level sick shit, and sorry for swearing, but it really pisses me off. If I was in that room and I heard that, I probably would have punched him in the neck. Like, I just absolutely not. Like that really bothers me. And so this is why we just have to get the hell away from all of these people. But the concept is good, which is you want aspirin instead of chewing on willow bark and getting all the rest of the crap that's in willow bark. You take an aspirin and you get the exact dose that you want. Or you want digitalis. And so instead of huffing down a bunch of, foxglove and potentially getting too much and killing yourself, or not enough and doing nothing, and then thousands of other chemicals in there that don't do what you want them to do, it's better just to take the pill. And that's another thing too. You don't know doses, in the herbals. It's difficult, because you say, okay, 3 ounces of this leaf. Okay. But, how was that leaf grown? What were the conditions? What were the soil conditions? Like, it matters. It changes, the efficacy and potency of that. So you may not actually be getting all the stuff that you want, or maybe you're getting too much, and then you have other problems as well. So, I 100% plants as medicine. I wouldn't use it for anything else. And there are traditional cultures that still use plants as medicine. Great. But if you can get the pill form, I think that's probably safer to get. You know exactly what you're getting, right? You're not getting it with a whole bunch of other nonsense, and you know the exact dose of what you're getting, which is very important. So that's those are sort of my thoughts on the herbal side of things. Wendhorn, thank you very much for the super chat. I'm on day 5. IBS I suffered from for decades is gone. Awesome. Lost 8 pounds so far. How do I stop the weight loss? How do I stop this train? Yeah. So, well, first of all, great. I'm really glad that the IBS is getting better. And it's just 5 days. Isn't that crazy? It's 5 days of just not eating the things that cause the IBS. I mean, that's a direct cause and effect relationship there, isn't it? Right? You're eating things and you're having these problems. You stop eating those things, you stop having the problems immediately, right? So that's pretty clear cause and effect relationship there, at least for Wendhorn. Lost 8 pounds so far. So how do you stop losing weight? Well, there is weight that you want to lose. There's different pathological weight, fat, especially visceral fat, and other sorts of inflammation will cause you to retain water and all these sorts of things. So you'll lose weight early on. A lot of that's going to be that inflammation, that water weight, some of that visceral fat that you don't want, and but you're not going to lose muscle mass if you're eating enough, ever. And so you can have intramuscular fat, you can have glycogen in your muscles that pull in water as well. So you might look like you're smaller, but your muscles are not smaller. If you're eating enough meat, fatty meat, until it stops tasting good, just sort of beating that dead horse, then and you will not lose muscle mass. Okay. You'll lose fat and you'll get down to a stable body fat percentage, but you're not going to go, crazy, below that. But our bodies want different amounts of body fat. So when I'm not working out, I'm roughly around 10% body fat. When I'm working out and lifting weights a lot, I'm like go down to like 5-6% body fat. And that's just what my body likes to do. And that's with eating as much as possible. Right. And so, if you want to keep weight on or put weight on in particular, you need to work out, you need to lift weights, you need to do sprints, and you need to eat enough. So just keep eating until meat stops tasting good. It's very easy to undereat on a carnivore diet because you're just not hungry anymore. You're just not as hungry as you normally would be, right? Or you don't feel that hunger. Those hunger signals are very different, right? And so you just need to go by taste. So if meat tastes good, if fatty meat tastes good, you are hungry, you need to keep eating until meat stops tasting good, and you'll do fine. You won't lose weight, and you'll put on muscle very easily if you work out and do that as well. So good luck with that. Also, I'll reiterate, guys, on Monday, this coming up Monday in Perth time, Sunday evening, US time, I'll be premiering my episode with Dr. Bill Schindler, where he visited the blue zones, the actual blue zones, and actually tells you what they actually eat there. And it is absolutely not anything close to the Netflix documentary that just came out and the blue zone studies. It's not real studies. It's editorialization and misinformation. So he went down as a professor of archaeology and paleoanthropology at University of Maryland, since retired. And he went there with his wife. I was actually going to go visit them over there and travel with them. That would have been awesome. But I was having visa issues and couldn't leave Australia at the time. So that was disappointing. But he was able to go there, and they saw what it's actually like and what they actually eat and how they actually live. And it's very different. So please join me then. It's the more people that join for the premiere, the better it does, the better algorithm treats it and puts it out to more people, and it does really well. So please do come out for that on it'll be Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time, and 7 a.m. Perth time. So in Australia. So thanks, guys. Hopefully we'll see you there. So Lisa says, hi, Dr. Chaffee. I have to have a hip replacement, unfortunately. Should I fast before surgery, and for how long? Well, it depends on your condition beforehand. I mean, I don't think that you necessarily need to fast if you're on a carnivore diet. I don't think that's necessarily of benefit. If you feel that that will sort of prime you ready to go, I mean, you're already going to fast a bit, right? Because you're not supposed to eat from the night before. So I think that that's perfectly fine. If you're on a carnivore diet, just eat dinner the night before, and you go into surgery, and you'll be fine. Fasting after the surgery, because they're just going to give you a bunch of carbs and sugar in the hospital, might be I would. I mean, I wouldn't eat any of that crap. Oh, but you have to eat. I don't actually. That's not a law. And they might want you to like open up your bowels or something like that. Well, get me a damn steak, and some butter. Then we'll talk. But I wouldn't eat that crap afterwards. But you do need to eat afterwards, and I don't think you need to fast beforehand if you're eating a carnivore diet. I think you do just fine. and you want the protein and you want the fat and you want those building blocks because your body's going to, it takes a lot to recover from surgery. And so, you want those nutrients and you want that protein, you want that fat, and you want those vitamins. So I wouldn't fast any more than you have to in order to be ready for surgery. And good luck with that. I hope it goes well. I'm sure it will. Hip replacements now are very straightforward. They're very straightforward, and people get up and get going sort of right away. And um and uh, you know so so good luck with that, and I hope it does well. Tanya Butner, thank you very much for the super chat. Appreciate it. Recommendation for PTSD, please. I have depression. So I would watch the interview I did with Professor Chris Palmer from Harvard. He's a professor of psychiatry there, and he literally wrote the book on mental health issues such as depression. Um, I think that PTSD could be wrapped up in that as well, but certainly the other aspects getting of mental health being optimized can help you deal with the PTSD and get the counseling and help that you need to deal with those issues. PTSD is very complex. Obviously, there are a lot of things that can go into PTSD, and obviously there are real serious things that precipitate PTSD. It's not just a mental health issue; is a psychological trauma sort of issue, with something that's happened. So it can be certainly exacerbated by mental health issues like depression. So I would go to that. He has shown that fixing metabolic health, fixing the mitochondrial health, that all this comes down to the mitochondria not working right, and so our brains don't work right because they're being run by mitochondria that aren't working properly, and there aren't enough of them. And so you need to go onto a carnivore diet. I would suggest that. And he actually recommends a ketogenic or even carnivore diet. And he's done both. And any carnivore keto diet, which a carnivore diet is, will increase the number of mitochondria you have and will increase their efficacy and how well they work. And that's very, very important for mental health. And so that can help significantly. So I would go on a carnivore diet, a high fat carnivore diet, eat fatty meat until you stop tasting good, cut out everything else, alcohol especially, sugar especially, seed oils especially, sweeteners of all kinds, artificial and otherwise, especially. Get all of those out of there. Just fatty meat, just water. Then watch my episode with Professor Chris Palmer to find out more of the why as opposed to the what to do. And good luck with that. I'm very sorry that you're suffering with that, and I hope it gets better. And I do. Quantum Truths JCK, thank you very much for the super chat. Hi, Doc. Thank you for helping to reignite my motivation to start carnivore again. Oh, well, I'm very glad to hear that. You're welcome. Last time I had very bad oxalate dumping. I want to be super strict this time. No sweeteners, no coffee. But what about herbal tea to ease oxalate dumping severity? Yeah, that's a good question. So if you are really having the oxalate dumping and you don't think it's anything else, then having a bit of those teas with a bit of oxalates, as per Sally Norton's protocol, which is I think it's like below 100 milligrams, like 50 to 100 milligrams a day. It depends on where you're at, I think, but it's in her book anyway, and she talks about it a lot. As you can watch her interview on my channel and other ones that she's done elsewhere, and she talks about that. So yes, if you're having very bad dumping and you're very symptomatic and a bit of that helps, then great. That's okay. I mean, that's a medicine at that point, right? Because you're having a specific problem that this helps with. And so you're sort of using that medicinally. And you obviously just try to keep it to that medicinal usage. But no, that's fine. That's fine if that's helping. And you need that to get you through those periods. Sally said to me once that most people will just have a rough few days or maybe a rough few weeks, and then they get over it with the oxalate dumping. Some people have a much more serious time with it, and using the teas is probably advisable at that time. And but just see, it could be that you just sort of need this for a few days, a few weeks, and then you don't anymore, and that would be great. But if you do, you do, and just otherwise, just don't eat anything else, and just eat the meat and fat. Otherwise, and you'll do great. So, well done there. I'm glad that you're doing better, and I'm glad you're going after it again. And good luck with it, Joe Voss. I've learned a lot from you. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Joe, and I'm glad that you've learned something, and hopefully it helps. Uh, Zill, thank you for the super chat. Hello, Dr. Chaffee. Do you think I can do carnivore without salt? When I add salt, I always feel puffy and thirsty. Or should I reduce my intake or give it up completely? Yeah, you can definitely stop it. I've stopped it. I don't use salt anymore, really at all, and unless it comes in, because of something that I've gotten, that someone else has made, or has been, at a restaurant or something like that, or whatever. So, they'll add salt. I won't. So, no, you definitely don't need salt, and you especially don't need salt um, if you're feeling like, symptomatic with it. If you feel that salt is making it worse, then definitely don't have salt. Yeah, you can just cut that right out. Orthodox Methodist, thank you very much for the super chat. I couldn't type details because of the limitations, but I'm just a regular guy just trying to get into ideal physique. I appreciate it. Thanks. Yeah, perfect. So, if you're just trying to, just lose fat and build muscle and get a good physique, you don't need a specific protein or fat ratio. You just need enough for your body. And so, just eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good, and you'll be fine. There shouldn't be any issues there. And yeah, good luck with it. Sebastian, thank you very much for the super chat. Sebastian PR, maybe Puerto Rico. Thank you for your work, Dr. Chaffee. Would you recommend starting carnivore during breastfeeding? My wife had tachycardia after her first day. So tachycardia potentially from dehydration, potentially from lower electrolytes that can then precipitate dehydration. You can definitely have insensible water loss and fluid balance changes. So, have some more electrolytes, have some more water, certainly. But yes, it is definitely, I would 100% recommend it during breastfeeding and pregnancy and all these sorts of things, because that is the most important time for that baby to get the proper nutrients and to not be exposed to things that are going to be harmful to it. So especially for brain development, body development, they will develop much faster and much healthier if they're eating what they are designed to eat, right? So yeah, so I would go with that, and probably drink more water, and add electrolytes in, like sodium, potassium, magnesium, if that is needed to help with the tachycardia. And if that's not helping, go get it checked out and see what's going on with an EKG. And but yeah, good luck with that. Your child is going to be seriously benefited by doing this. They're going to develop to their genetic potential, which is what any parent would want. So that's great. Good job. James Joseph Finn, thank you very much for the super chat. Greetings, Grandmaster. What are your thoughts on smoking cigars and marijuana? I'm on carnivore, exercise and feel great, no asthma, even with smoking. Yeah, I mean, they're all plants, right? So I mean, I don't do anything with plants, eating them or otherwise, except for looking at them or stepping on them. But yeah, cigars, smoking, tobacco or marijuana, it's going to have deleterious effects. And so while you're going to be much better off doing carnivore, you're not going to save yourself from all the deleterious effects. It is interesting that, the lung cancer and emphysema and heart disease, even everyone was smoking before the 1900s, and yet heart disease really wasn't a thing. And most people smoked. Also, it's a type of cigarettes or tobacco and things like that. The ones that are like flue dried seem to be more of a problem. They had a whole bunch of horrible chemical formaldehyde. I mean, just God, formaldehyde, benzene, all these just horrible, horrible things that are just known carcinogens and toxic agents. Like, why the hell would that be okay to add that shit in there? I guess it's just been like, look, it's smoking, so they're doing this to themselves, and if they're willing to do this in the first place, then whatever, we don't care about them, and it's up to them. But I mean, it's so bad. So I don't know if cigars are going to be cured that way. If they are, I would definitely avoid them. Um, marijuana, from what I remember, can have its own problems outside of just the chemical agents that are in marijuana. Like, the marijuana plants seem to pull up more heavy metals, apparently. And so if they're grown in soil that has a lot of heavy metals, you can get heavy metal poisoning, and you can get problems due to that. There was even a Dr. House episode, however accurate that is. And there was one guy who's like, there's cadmium. There's like, he got cadmium poisoning because of that. But take that for what it is. But it's going to have problems. Obviously, it's not perfect. And, and you may go your whole life and not have any real issues that you notice of it, but is it 100% optimal and perfect? No. So for me, I tend to avoid that sort of thing. I haven't had a cigar since I came back on this. I'm not 100% opposed to it, as in like never having it, but thinking about it, I just have no interest. I don't know if I ever would, because I just don't want to. I mean, even when I was eating other things, I just felt a bit junky and a bit gross, for a couple of days afterwards. Bit of a head fog, less energy, not my best. And so I don't like that. And so for me, for preference wise, I don't really have any interest in smoking cigars. If I were to do it, it'd be once a decade, maybe. It's been 6 years and I haven't done it, so that's why I'm guessing maybe once a decade, but probably not even that. So it causes harm, and so I like having all of that stuff out of my system. So, but that's a personal choice. If you want to do that, you can. But yes, it will cost something. It will cost a bit of your health. So, up to you on whether you want to do that. Avatar, thank you very much for the super chat. Not seeing a question attached, unfortunately. Hopefully, that was on purpose, or maybe further down. Miss DFM, does eating a carnivore lifestyle help with vertigo? Just curious. Thanks. Well, it depends on the cause of vertigo. So there are multiple different kinds of vertigo. Sometimes you have like a bit of a little stone, or a bit of fluff in your inner ear that sort of floats around, sort of hits on the different hairs, and you go, oh, it just completely disorients you. And so if that's the case, probably not. If it's sort of an inflammatory component, then probably. But it just depends on what is causing the vertigo. But it's certainly worth a try, and it's going to help you in a lot of other ways anyway. So you're going to be better off for having done it. So even if it doesn't help that. Copper's Carnivore Kitchen. Just to thank you for all you do for us. Well, you're very welcome. Maggie's Fund is doing amazing and is just more proof of how genuine you are. Well, thank you. Thank you to Marie as well. Well, thank you very much. And for people to know, that's Maggie, who's the rancher, the 82-year-old rancher who's been doing carnivore basically her whole life, but at least for 65 plus years, where she's been an adult and out on her own. But before that, she sort of refused to eat vegetables and all that sort of stuff, because she just didn't like them and didn't want to do it. And so so she's been great, and she's been very inspirational to a lot of people. And she's in a bit of a hard time because there was a drought in Canada, and so hay prices are triple what they used to be, which is kind of scary. So just out of nowhere, ranchers are just having to sell half their herds, and they're just having to sell them to market. And the beef consumers and packers and things like that are buying them up, because they're the ones that they can afford it right now, because they're not going to winter them. They're going to, process them. And so that's kind of sad, that the herd sizes across Canada are now going to be decimated, and she's facing losing half of her herd,
if she can't get about $50,000 Canadian to get these things down for the winter. And it's difficult even then to find hay, but it's triple the price, right? And so they're struggling with that. So I started a Give Send Go thing. It's like GoFundMe, but it's just a different company that seems to be a bit better. And people have really come out really, really, really generously to help her, and we've raised half our goal of we're sort of hit $25,000 last night, which is amazing. And so thank you everyone who has donated that. You're absolutely wonderful people, and I really appreciate it. And Maggie does too. She was literally in tears when she saw the outpouring of help and support. And so the one of the things too is that if people donated 1,000 Canadian dollars or more, you would be invited out to stay with her on her ranch for 5 days in her guest cabin, and which is, it's very basic, but it's really nice. Elle and I stayed there. It has a little nice wood fire stove. You don't need that in the summer, but it's sort of nice. Reminded me of my grandmother's house. She always had a wood fired stove, and just sort of that smell and that feel, was the same. And be out there for 5 days and get to see how it is. It's a working ranch, so you get to see real work. And if you want to go out there and hang out in the fields with them, you can. And if you want to just hang out and enjoy the scenery, you can do that too, and share in their carnivore meals. So if people want to do that, it's I'll put the link up here as well, but it's on my Instagram as well, and it's GiveSendGo/Please Help Maggie. And I'll put that in the description as well if people want to help. And thank you very much to everyone who has. Very much appreciate it. Cody McGuire, take on 0-calorie, natural flavored sparkling waters like LaCroix and bubbly, etc. What is my take on that? Natural flavorings. Sugar's a natural flavoring. Arsenic's natural. What does that mean? It's a sales pitch, right? It's a marketing term. So I would just avoid it. God knows what's in it. God knows what it does. Is it the worst thing ever? I have no idea, because I don't know what they are, because it just says natural flavorings. It doesn't tell you what the hell it is. What's natural flavoring? Natural vanilla flavoring. It's not vanilla. You know what it is? It's beaver anal gland extract. That's a real thing. Okay. So that's a natural flavoring. Do you want that? Do you want the vanilla LaCroix? Is that what you want? Beaver anal gland? Is that what you want? I don't. I'll avoid that. Thanks. And so, in the different sweeteners or whatever, don't want any of those ever. Never want any sort of sweetener. They're not good. You don't want them. Bubbly, maybe champagne. Is that what you're talking about? Obviously, there's going to be a lot of stuff in there that you don't want, but just sparkling water, not too worried about that. So, just carbonated water isn't going to be, well, I don't know of it being really an issue anyway. There's some dishonest studies looking at carbonated beverages and how these can be a problem, but they lump them in with soda, so it's just, they're just trying to hide the 8 ball. So I wouldn't worry about that. Carbonated water, I don't think it's too much of a problem. If you want to just sort of have it sometimes as a treat, really probably not a problem, but not one that I know of anyway. Carnivore developer, thank you very much. How to make the best broth and store it? Making bone broth, you just collect all the bones that you've used. I tend to like keeping it to one animal, so like just beef bones or lamb bones or chicken bones. I've mixed those before. I didn't really think the taste was great. You just boil them, you just simmer them for a day or more, and you just salt to taste if you want to do that. You have little bits of meat on there as well, and you just boil the living hell out of it, simmer the living hell out of it, cook the living hell out of it. You can put it in a crock pot or a pressure cooker, do it much quicker, and then store it. You'd store that in the fridge. You would store that in the fridge. so it doesn't go bad. But you can also get different bone broth concentrates that you just add hot water to. One that I've used before is called Body Glue. It has different flavors. I just get the normal natural one. And it's nice. You just get a little dollop of this thick, tarry stuff, put in a cup, and just mix it up with some hot water. You got some bone broth. So that's what I do anyway. Nathan Bustamante, thank you very much for the super chat. I am new to carnivore. I'm about 3 weeks in and having gallbladder pain when I eat a lot of fat. 2 ribeyes in one day, enough to trigger pain. Any advice? So look, you can have gallbladder stones or bile stones already. A lot of people do. And so if you're eating fat, you're just triggering your gallbladder to push this stuff out. It can start pushing on those gallstones, and that can hurt. And if they get sort of stuck, that'll really hurt, and it can get stuck. So sounds like you have gallstones. Now, the reason you have gallstones is because you haven't been eating enough fat, right? Because if you have been eating enough fat, then you would not have any bile left sitting in your gallbladder to form stones, right? So you would have just pushed it out. It would be gone. It would never form stones. So most people are under eating fat. Some people are going to develop stones when it's sitting there and getting concentrated. It can concentrate up to 20 times the concentration in the physiology textbooks. Probably some people concentrate more than that. And what does any hyper-concentrated solution do at rest? Turns into crystals and precipitate stones, sludge. That's what that is. And so sounds like you have gallstones. I do know people that have worked through that, and then eventually they either got rid of the stones or the stones dissolved enough that they don't have problems anymore. You do have a risk of one of those stones getting caught and needing a procedure to get it uncaught, either surgery or tube down the throat called an ERCP. Go in, grab it, pull it out of a common bile duct, depending on what's going on. So that's a risk, but I don't think that it's a good idea to stop eating fat and stop eating the carnivore, because you're delaying the problem till later if you do. But you can also try splitting up your fatty meals throughout the day, and if you're eating just under a certain amount of fat and one go, maybe you don't have that gallbladder pain, and that's perfectly fine. So maybe just reduce a bit the amount that you eat at one time and split that meal up throughout the day and see if that helps. And hopefully it does. And hopefully this can just pass those safely, or dissolve them enough that you can pass them safely, or they just go away. And then you don't have to worry about it again. Hopefully that's the case. Other people have found that to be the case. I am going to have to, oh, goodness gracious. All right. I'm going to have to probably go pretty quickly through these guys because I'm at my hard stop. But I'll try to do these really quickly. Please don't add any more questions. That Wendy Hardy, how do I treat my primary Addison's if I start feeling sick when transitioning? I know a lot of people get headaches and upset stomachs. Thank you. Primary Addison's. So you'll be taking medications. So you can still take your medication. So do take your medications as prescribed. It may be that your Addison's starts to improve and you start making cortisol on your own. Until and unless that happens, you need to keep taking these things exactly as prescribed. So keep doing that. And generally what you're referring to is you take a double dose in general. From what I understand, I'm not an endocrinologist, but from my memory of these things, you take a double dose when you're sick because you need a bit more cortisol. And so I would just do that. I would just keep taking your meds as prescribed. And if you think that you don't need as much, you talk to your doctor and get tested again and see if you need to do it quite as much. So good luck with that. Kim, thank you very much for the super chat. There's no question attached, but thank you very much. Thomas G, what are your thoughts on the future of meat? Will it be hard to get or even banned in your opinion? I think they are absolutely trying to ban it. They are trying to ban it in a lot of countries and in schools and in workplaces, and cutting off the meat supply, making it more difficult, and decimating herds. And that's just going to make it harder and harder and harder for normal people to get meat that's not an extraordinary high cost. So I am worried about that. And this is why I think it's important to support people like Maggie and individual ranchers and buy directly from them. So you skip out the middleman and the packers and all these bastards trying to get in your way. But realistically, what I plan to do at some point is to buy some land and have some cows, maybe some sheep. They're really dumb and a pain in the ass, but maybe do that as well. So I that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to support farmers. I'm going to support ranchers. I'm going to support people, doing the work, and try to help them get money so that they can be independent from these packers and the big corporations that ruin their life and rule their life. And eventually to have my own land and my own animals, and to be completely self-sufficient and off the grid, and not have to worry about these bastards playing any sort of games that they want to play. Okay. And Wayne C says, what do I look into testing or continuing XYs for carnivore when nearly zero results for fat loss? 6'2", 50 years old, 274 pounds, 7.8 uric acid level. Skin tags on back from over the years, but normal A1C glucose carnivore since May. Look, you just need to keep doing what you're doing. There are a lot of people that are hormonally imbalanced. They can be leptin insensitive, right? So you could check that, just check your thyroid, check your hormones, check your androgens, check your testosterone, check your estrogen, check your leptin, and check your vitamins and minerals and things like that. Those should be fine by now if you've been on it since May. But maybe not. It could just mean you need a little top up, maybe a little bit of liver a couple times a week would help you out. And but then understanding that if your hormones are out of whack and your thyroid's out of whack and your leptin is very elevated, it's going to take longer for you to lose weight. And but that doesn't mean that you won't get healthy. That doesn't mean that you won't feel better and have better energy and be able to work out and start exercising, because you will. And so focus on that, focus on those good things. And then eventually your hormones will improve, and you may need to go on something like thyroid medication or something like that to try to get you out of the doldrums for the time being, so that you can feel better. And then give your body a chance to heal and recover. It takes time, takes months, can take years for our bodies to heal past the decades of hell we've put them through. And so our bodies are great. They can stand a lot, but they can't go on forever doing that sort of thing. And so, and as you say, zero results for fat loss, but what are your other results? How's your energy levels? Are you on any medications that you were able to come off of? Is your brain working better? Your brain fog going away? Focus on those things. Eventually, your hormones will balance out. Eventually, you will start losing weight. Make sure you're eating enough. Eat enough meat, eat enough fat. If you're chronically under eating and dieting, you are going to trigger your body to lower your metabolism and keep it low. So that we're not going to give up any of this fat, because it's very important to keep that, because you're going to die. If you're eating enough meat, eating enough fat, and eating until fatty meat stops tasting good, then you will find that your metabolism goes up and your hormones improve more, and you will start losing more weight. So I would just be patient and keep going with it. So good luck with that, Wayne. Hermes, thank you very much for the super chat. Great name, by the way. Big fan of the Greek, especially the ancient Greeks. Hi, does changing into a carnivore diet change your personality? Because I feel so empty sometimes, like I've lost all my microbiome. No, look, it shouldn't change who you are as a person, but it can definitely reduce your agitation and your stress levels, make you much more calm and relaxed, and help in your mental state. And people call that carnivore zen. So that can certainly improve. I don't know what you mean, like you've lost all your microbiome and that's making you feel empty, or that your personality is different. But if you think you have microbiome issues and you would benefit from that, use some fermented dairy, some live culture fermented yogurts that don't have carbohydrates or flavorings or any of that nonsense, and mix it up with meat, chew it with meat, swallow it with the meat, and that will start reseeding a healthy microbiome, and that can certainly help. And it does seem to be that our microbiomes play a big role in our health and how we feel. So I would try that, and hopefully you feel better, and that any personality changes you find are a positive. I certainly find that I am much more even keel, and I don't get agitated and pissed off over stupid things. Not that I always did anyway, but everyone has their bad moments. Much less of those now, and so I would, yeah, that's what I would do, and good luck with it. I hope you feel better. Okay, lucky last. Thank you all, everyone, for coming on. Well, this would be the last question from Rutor Voss. What if you're having trouble sleeping? Could it be due to too much chocolate? Yes, it can absolutely be due to too much chocolate. You're going to have sugar. You're going to have a bit of caffeine. You're going to have other sorts of things that can stimulate you or agitate you. Um, it's something that I've found certainly in myself and a lot of people, that when you go on a carnivore diet and you get rid of the chocolate and certainly the caffeine and the coffee and all that sort of stuff, and just plants in general, carbs in particular, you sleep much better and you sleep much more deeply. You get more rested. You feel better the next day. If you're having problems, so even a low dose of melatonin can sometimes help sort of get you back on track. You take it at the same time every day. Melatonin doesn't work if the lights are on. Okay. So you need to turn the lights off at least an hour before bed, even if you just want your natural melatonin, which is arguably very good. Put on a sleep mask, get all that light out, because even just little bits of light, just the charging light on the phone, that's enough to disturb your sleep. So I would turn off all the lights, get off screens, get off TVs, get off phones, turn the lights down low, read a book, listen to a book, and or whatever you want to listen to sort of calm yourself down and get rid of the lights and get ready for bed. And put on a sleep mask. Good thing about a sleep mask too is that you're just triggering your body. It's bedtime. It's time to sleep now. I put that sleep mask on. It's lights out, literally and figuratively. So that's where I find I sleep much better. So okay, great. I hope that helps. I hope that helps everyone, and I hope you guys found that interesting. Thank you all so much for coming on and joining me today, and everyone for the super chats. That's really, really nice of you, and everyone who's been helping Maggie. I really appreciate it. I've donated myself, and that's not to say anything else. That I just really like Maggie, and I really appreciate her and what she does, and I want to support her. So that was something I wanted to do, and so I did that, and I thank all of you for doing that as well. And I will hopefully see you guys on Sunday, Monday. So Sunday Pacific time at 5 p.m., 8 p.m. Eastern. And on Sunday night, I'll be doing the live premiere with Dr. Bill Schindler, where we talk about his experience actually being in the blue zones and seeing what the hell that's about, which is very different from what we've been told. And so getting some actual facts and information about that, or what is that? 7 a.m. Ooh, so it's maybe 4 p.m. Ew. Check that. I think it's 4 p.m. Sunday, because that'll be 7 a.m. Perth time. Yeah, so that should be 4 p.m. Sunday Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time. So hopefully that's not smack in the middle of dinner or anything like that for people. And yeah, great. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Great to see you all. Thank you so much for coming on, and hopefully that was useful for people. Great. We'll see you later, everyone.